Chapter 37. With Ji Tianqing's current strength at the 9th body refinement layer, he had no chance of winning against the Scarlet Fire Ape. His expression was serious as he vigilantly stared at the approaching Scarlet Fire Ape. The little ice fox poked its little head out of the bag. After looking at the Scarlet Fire Ape, it disdainfully curled its lips. Tch! Just that stupid monkey. How strong can it be? In the past, it ran to the Xianbing cave to save its child, but I sent it flying down the mountain with a single slap. Ji Tianqing instantly knit his brows and snappily shouted, "It came to find you for revenge? Could it be that you killed its child?" The little ice fox disapprovingly said, "What's there to be surprised about? I was bored staying in the Xianbing cave and its child was jumping around outside. Of course I had to bring that little monkey into the cave to play with. I never thought that little monkey would be so weak. I didn't even play with it for a bit before its 4 legs kicked and it died." Ji Tianqing was speechless. He angrily laughed as he scolded, "You're still being reasonable, aren't you? Hearing your tone, you didn't play to your heart's content and seemed disappointed? AI. Let's not talk about the past." The little ice fox had a dispirited appearance as it shook its head and said, "You should think about how to deal with this fire monkey. You." Ji Tianqing angrily gritted his teeth. He wished he could beat the little ice fox half to death to vent his anger. But at this time, the Scarlet Fire Ape was only 5 feet away from him. The Scarlet Fire Ape opened its strong arms and stood on the ground. Its scarlet eyes stared at Ji Tianqing. It opened its wide mouth and revealed 2 rows of sharp teeth. At such a close distance, Ji Tianqing could smell the thick scent of blood coming from its body. He could clearly see the blood and bone fragments in its teeth. He secretly gripped the blood dragon sword and his muscles tightened as he accumulated all his strength. Roar! The Crimson Fire Ape suddenly let out a low roar and suddenly jumped up. Like an arrow leaving the bow, it pounced towards Ji Tianqing with its huge claws. Ji Tianqing immediately moved 3 meters away, narrowly dodging the Crimson Fire Ape's attack. Bang bang! The Crimson Fire Ape's huge claws slammed onto the ground, shattering a huge rock the size of a water tank. This red fire ape is actually so powerful. Ji Tianqing was shocked. He waved his sword with all his might and slashed at the back of the red fire ape. The Crimson Fire Ape turned around and swung its arms to hit the blood dragon sword, sending it flying. With a whoosh sound, it stabbed into a tree not far away. Ji Tianqing was also sent flying 10 feet away and fell on the grass. His right shoulder was numb and stinging, and for a moment, he couldn't exert any strength. The Crimson Fire Ape's figure flashed and pounced over. With a bang, it slapped Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing was immediately sent flying more than 20 feet away. He crashed into a big tree and rolled into the bushes. The clothes on his back were torn apart by the Crimson Fire Ape's sharp claws. His entire back was covered in blood and burning pain. After being slapped by the Crimson Fire Ape, he felt that all the bones in his body were about to break. He was so dizzy that he couldn't get up at all. The bag on his back was also sent flying by the Crimson Fire Ape. It fell into the grass and all the food inside spilled out. However, the little ice fox was safe and sound. Seeing that the situation wasn't good, it had already jumped out of the bag and onto the top of a tree. The Crimson Fire Ape didn't chase after Ji Tianqing. It stared at the little ice fox on the top of the tree with its blood-red eyes and bared its fangs as it growled. Roar! It jumped again with all its might and leaped more than 10 meters high. It waved its claws and pounced on the little ice fox on the top of the tree. With a kacha-kacha sound, the thick tree branches between the Crimson Fire Ape and the little ice fox were all smashed into pieces. Seeing that there was nowhere to hide, the little ice fox's silver eyes were filled with rage as it let out an angry roar. It roared, "Damn old monkey, go to hell!" It waved its front claws with all its might and shot out a 2-foot-long icy blue light. It shot towards the Crimson Fire Ape like a sword. The Crimson Fire Ape had just pounced in front of the little ice fox and couldn't dodge in time. It was instantly hit in the chest by the icy blue light. Bang! With a muffled sound, the Crimson Fire Ape flew back from the top of the tree. It drew an arc in the sky and landed on the grass a few meters away with a plop. There was a big hole in the grass. Dirt, stones and grass were mixed together and splattered everywhere. When the Crimson Fire Ape struggled to get up, its chest was already stained with blood. There was a fist-sized bloody hole. The little ice fox had released an icy blue light and severely injured the Crimson Fire Ape. However, the icy blue brilliance had already exhausted its power,
and it immediately fell from the tree into the bushes in a dispirited manner.
Seeing this, the crimson fire ape's eyes shone fiercely. It roared and pounced on the little ice fox. Ji Tianqing saw that the little ice fox couldn't escape or resist. He subconsciously rushed over to save it. However, his blood dragon sword was sent flying. Without a weapon in his hand, how could he block the crimson fire ape's attack? At this critical moment, he suddenly recalled the scene in the Xianbing cave last night. At that time, he was bound by the little ice fox's icy blue light.
He struggled with all his might and managed to force out the 12 streaks of sword qi in his body.
They circled around him and danced. Thinking of this, he activated the sword qi in his body with all his might and forced the 12 streaks of sword qi out of his body. Swish, 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 swish. 12 streaks of golden sword qi instantly appeared and danced around him. Go! Ji Tianqing roared and controlled the 12 streaks of sword qi to attack the crimson fire ape that was 3 meters away. The crimson fire ape's chest was severely injured. Its strength was greatly reduced, and its speed of attack was also much slower. It had just rushed to the little ice fox's side and raised a pair of fan-sized palms to slap the little ice fox. At this moment, the 12 streaks of sword qi pierced over at lightning speed. It was immediately forced to withdraw its palms and quickly retreat. Swish! Swish! The sword qi slashed the crimson fire ape's shoulder and neck, leaving behind 3 thin and long wounds. Dark red blood flowed out. Although the crimson fire ape's injuries weren't serious, the 12 streaks of sword qi that were flying around it made it unable to get close to the little ice fox. It roared furiously and desperately waved its claws to attack the surrounding sword qi. It wanted to break through the encirclement of sword qi and kill Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing's face was as pale as a sheet of paper. He dodged backward while concentrating on controlling the sword qi to kill the crimson fire ape. The crimson fire ape kept roaring and desperately closed in on Ji Tianqing. However, it was pierced by the sword qi again and again. There were more and more wounds on its body. Ji Tianqing fought with it for a while and was drenched in sweat. He was so tired that he almost fainted.
It was only now that he realized that controlling the 12 streaks of sword qi to fight was extremely taxing on his mind.
With his current strength, he could only hold on for about 30 breaths before fainting. Fortunately, the crimson fire ape was severely injured. After being pierced by the sword qi, it was bleeding profusely and its strength was quickly weakening. It only held on for about 20 breaths before it roared in grief and indignation. It turned and fled into the forest. Ji Tianqing had already exhausted his mind and physical strength. He couldn't chase after the crimson fire ape.
He quickly withdrew the 12 streaks of sword qi and sat on the grass, panting heavily.
Chapter 38. The crimson fire ape had escaped, and the forest was quiet again. Ji Tianqing lay on the grass and looked at the sky with misty eyes. The orange sunset was gradually falling to the horizon. The sky was getting dark, and the moon would rise in at most 2 hours. He knew that time was tight, but he did not have the energy to get up. He did not even want to move his fingers. Too tired.
The tiredness that came from the depths of his soul made him realize the consequences of overexerting his mind.
Although I can control the sword energy to kill enemies within 10 feet of me, this is an effect that can only be achieved by someone at the 7th stage of the true energy realm. But this consumes too much energy. If I use it a few more times, I might become mentally weak and become a fool. It seems that I have to be careful in the future and only use it at critical moments to save my life. He closed his eyes and thought silently, waiting for his physical and mental strength to slowly recover. At this moment, the little ice fox poked its head out from the grass. It looked around cautiously.
Seeing that there was no danger around, it picked up the bag not far away and dragged it to Ji Tianqing.
Old Ji, didn't you bring many pills in your bag? Quickly use the pills to recover your energy. It's getting dark. We have to leave this place quickly. As it spoke, it took out 4 or 5 small white jade bottles from the bag and lined them up in front of Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing stretched out his hands and picked up a small jade bottle with the words, "Energy Nourishing Pill" on it. He opened the bottle and poured out a few red pills. He stuffed them into his mouth, chewed twice, and swallowed them. Suddenly, he realized that something was wrong. He looked at the little ice fox in confusion. Little fox, why are more than half of my pills gone? Did you secretly eat them? The little ice fox took 2 steps back and explained with a smile, I was bored lying in the bag, so I ate the pills like they were candy. I didn't do it on purpose. You stinky fox. Ji Tianqing was so angry that he wanted to hit it.
However, he had not recovered his energy and could only give up.
Humph. I think you want to secretly eat the pills to recover your energy and then run away? Little Ice Fox rolled her eyes and quickly changed the topic. Hey, old G, don't talk. It's more important to recover your strength. If we don't leave before dark, the smell of blood on the grass will attract a large number of demonic beasts. At that time, the two of us can only become the demonic beast's dinner. Ji Tianqing suppressed his anger and swallowed a few more recovery pills to quickly recover his strength. About an hour later, the sky darkened, and night was about to fall. At this time, Ji Tianqing's physical strength had recovered by about 60 to 70%. He carried his backpack and continued to rush to the mountain peak. On the way to the summit, he heard the sounds of demonic beasts running in all directions, as well as the roars of beasts. The little ice fox quickly reminded him, the red starflower has bloomed, and its scent is getting stronger. The demonic beasts nearby have smelled the scent and are rushing over to snatch it. You have to speed up. Otherwise, not only will we not be able to obtain the scarlet meteorite flower, we will also be besieged by a large group of demonic beasts. Ji Tianqing frowned and rushed to the peak with all his might. After a quarter of an hour, he finally reached the peak of the mountain, which was thousands of feet high, and came to a forest with sparse trees. He looked around vigilantly, looking for the location of the red starflower and checking the situation around him. However, the sky was already dark, and the forest was dimly lit. It was difficult to see clearly.
He could only hear the sounds from the surrounding forest getting louder and louder, and the roars of beasts were getting closer.
Little Ice Fox quickly stretched out her little paw and pointed to the southwest of the forest. Over there. Go quickly, there's a cliff over there. At this moment, Ji Tianqing did not have time to distinguish whether she was telling the truth or not. He hurriedly rushed over.
He ran wildly for more than 3 miles before he rushed out of the dense and dark forest and came to a patch of rubble.
The empty space with a radius of 1,000 feet was filled with rubble. Between the dark brown boulders, there were weeds that were half a man's height. Ji Tianqing jumped into the rubble, and his body nimbly passed through dozens of boulders and dense bushes. Finally, he arrived at the edge of the cliff.
5 steps in front of him was the cliff, and in front of him was the sky that was shrouded in thick fog.
The cliff was at least thousands of feet deep. White fog constantly rose from the bottom of the cliff, obscuring everything at the bottom of the cliff. Ji Tianqing could not see clearly. Little Ice Fox's little red nose twitched twice, and her eyes revealed a touch of joy. She hurriedly urged, Old G, the scent of the red starflower is coming from the bottom of the cliff. It's not more than 200 feet away from us. Hurry up and look for it. Ji Tianqing was also delighted, and he looked around in high spirits. He stepped on the edge of the cliff and leaned half of his body to look down. He immediately saw that there was a steep rock cliff below the cliff. However, the cliff was not flat, and there were many cracks in many places. There were also many protruding boulders embedded in the cliff, and there were many green vines growing on them. Night finally fell. The stars and the moon had not yet appeared, and the world was pitch black. Ji Tianqing anxiously searched the area within a radius of 200 feet, but he did not see the red starflower. He did not even find a strand of strange-looking medicinal herb. Suddenly, Little Ice Fox, who was lying on his shoulder, stretched out her little paw and pointed at a huge rock at the bottom of the cliff. She cried out in surprise, Old Ji, look over there. Ji Tianqing hurriedly looked in the direction that she was pointing at, and he immediately saw that in the cracks of the huge rock, there was a faint silver light. It's the red starflower. It must be. Ji Tianqing's spirits were lifted, and he hurriedly found a vine that was as thick as a wrist on the ground. He climbed down the cliff using the vine. Before he came to the Taiyi Mountains, he had carefully investigated information about the red starflower. The red starflower was more than 2 feet tall. Its stem and branches were dark, but its flower was silver. This flower had absorbed the essence of the sun, moon, and stars for many years. Its petals would emit a faint silver light at night, just like starlight. However, this flower only bloomed once every 60 years, and each plant only had 1 flower. The flower would only bloom for 6 days before it wilted. Not long after, Ji Tianqing crawled along the vines until he was about 10 feet below the cliff. His feet stepped on a big rock that protruded from the cliff. However, he was still more than 40 feet away from the huge rock where the red starflower grew. With his strength, It was impossible for him to jump over. The cliff between the two huge rocks was bare, and there was no place for him to lean on.
There was only a cluster of dark green vines growing on it.
The vines were only as thick as chopsticks, and they looked very weak. They could not support his weight at all. He had no doubt that if he climbed those vines to pick the red starflower, he would definitely fall off the cliff and be smashed into pieces. At this moment, Ji Tianqing's face revealed a helpless, bitter smile. The red starflower was not far in front of him, but he could not pick it, and he could not even get close. Moreover, he could clearly hear the footsteps of demonic beasts running from the rocks above the cliff. At least 3 demonic beasts had already rushed to the edge of the cliff. Chapter 39. What should I do? Ji Tianqing looked at the huge rock 4 feet away. His eyes were fixed on the starlight in the cracks of the rock, and he was trying to think of a solution anxiously. At this moment, the little ice fox came out of the bag and jumped down nimbly. It landed beside Ji Tianqing's feet. It observed the distance between the 2 huge rocks, and a smile flashed across its silver eyes. While Ji Tianqing was not paying attention, it jumped out with all its might. Swoosh!
Just as it was about to fall from mid-air, it suddenly opened a pair of ice-blue wings under its abdomen and flapped them vigorously. Its figure drew an ice-blue arc in mid-air, and it flew lightly towards the huge rock not far away. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing was stunned for a moment, and immediately revealed a gratified smile. That's right. Why didn't I think of the little fox? It has wings, and it can totally fly over there. He smiled approvingly at the little ice fox, and hurriedly reminded it, Little fox, be gentle. You must be careful. The little ice fox was flying in mid-air, and it turned its head to give him a playful smile. The next moment, it landed lightly on the huge rock where the red meteorite flower grew. It moved closer to the cracks of the rock, took a few glances, and stretched out its small claws to dig in the cracks. It lay on the huge rock, and its 12 furry tails were sticking out. The way it moved looked a little funny. However, Ji Tianqing ignored all this. His eyes were fixed on the cracks of the rock, and his heart was in his throat. The next moment, the little ice fox got up with all its might, turned around, and looked at him with a smile, and stretched out a pair of front claws. He saw that it was holding a silver flower in its claws. The flower was half the size of a palm, and it had 6 light silver petals that sparkled in the night sky. This was the red meteorite flower. Ji Tianqing's face was full of smiles, and he exclaimed excitedly, I finally got it. That's great. Little fox, thank you. However, the little ice fox held the red meteorite flower, but it did not intend to return to his side. Instead, it sat on the huge rock. It looked at Ji Tianqing with a smile, its silver eyes full of ridicule. Old Ji, do you think I will give you the scarlet starflower? Hee, I'm not your pet. The smile on Ji Tianqing's face suddenly froze. He glared at the little fox and said coldly, Little fox, what do you mean? Don't tell me you want to snatch my scarlet starflower? The scarlet starflower is used to repair the dantian and meridians. It's only effective for humans. It's useless for you. The little ice fox smiled and nodded. Yes, of course I know. I don't need this scarlet starflower, but I won't give it to you so easily. Unless you can promise me 3 things. Ji Tianqing was so angry that his face turned pale. He pointed at the little ice fox and scolded, You cruel and unscrupulous fox. I just saved your life, and now you want to negotiate with me. The ice fox laughed even more proudly. She even said in a sweet voice, Oh, old Ji, don't be like this. I have no choice. I want to save my life. After all, you don't trust me. I'm also afraid that you will abandon me one day, or kill me with a sword. Don't worry. My conditions are very simple. You will definitely agree. Ji Tianqing also understood that with the ice fox's cunning and intelligence, she would definitely have a backup plan. Therefore, he suppressed his anger and said with a dark face, Then tell me your conditions first. I will consider it. That's more like it. Old Ji, you are becoming more and more to my liking. The ice fox nodded with a smile and said her conditions in a serious tone. The first condition is that no matter when or what the situation is, you will never abandon me. Ji Tianqing furrowed his brows and pondered with a gloomy face. Seeing that he was silent, the ice fox played with the scarlet starflower with her claws. She shook her claws and tore off a light silver petal. Oh, why did a petal fall off? She pretended to be surprised and called out, but her tone was full of undisguised laughter. After saying that, she took the petal and waved it at Ji Tianqing a few times. When Ji Tianqing saw that a petal was torn off the scarlet starflower, his heart skipped a beat and his face became even more gloomy.
I promise you.
The ice fox nodded with satisfaction and continued. The second condition is that no matter when or what the situation is, you will never kill me. Ji Tianqing stared at her with a face full of anger and shouted angrily, I promise you.
Very good.
The ice fox nodded with satisfaction again and said with a smile, the third condition is that you must protect me wholeheartedly and not let me get hurt.
Don't you go overboard. Ji Tianqing was so angry that he gritted his teeth.
His eyes revealed a cold, murderous intent. The ice fox played with the scarlet starflower again and pretended to be surprised. Oh, it fell off again. Seeing that it was about to tear off another petal, Ji Tianqing's heart ached. Without hesitation, he shouted coldly, Don't!
I'll agree to your request. The ice fox looked at him with a smile but still refused to believe him.
It held the scarlet starflower with its little claws and extended it to the sky outside the giant rock.
It looked like it was going to throw it down the cliff.
Oh Ji, unless you swear to heaven and earth, I will only believe you.
Ji Tianqing was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. He stared at the ice fox with a pale face. If looks could kill, the ice fox would have been torn into pieces.
Hurry up and swear.
The ice fox urged with a smile.
Otherwise I will throw the scarlet starflower down the cliff. Ji Tianqing held back his anger and said through gritted teeth, Ji Tianqing, swear to heaven that I will never go back on my word after I agree to the 3 conditions of the ice fox.
The ice fox sat on the giant rock and looked at him with a smile. After listening to him, it said, That's it? Old Ji, you are not sincere. You haven't finished the second half of your sentence. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? Ji Tianqing was so angry that he almost vomited blood. With a black face he scolded, Stupid fox, are you done? The ice fox did not continue to pester him.
It nodded with a smile and said, All right, seeing that you are sincere, I will believe you for now.
Sigh, I am too kind and soft-hearted. Old Ji, you must remember the promise between us.
After it finished speaking, it flapped its wings and slowly flew back to Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing grabbed the scarlet starflower that it was holding and carefully put it into a sandalwood box together with the petal that was torn off.
Stupid fox. You.
Just as he was about to grab the little ice fox and give it a good beating, the little ice fox was prepared for it. It immediately flew 20 feet into the air.
Old Ji, don't be angry. Look above us first.
Ji Tianqing was so angry that he did not pay attention to the situation above the cliff. Now that he had calmed down, he turned his head and looked above the cliff.
His expression changed instantly.
He saw that on the edge of the cliff 10 feet above him, more than 10 heads of monsters had popped out. More than 10 pairs of cold eyes were staring at him with murderous intent.
Chapter 40.
The dozen or so gigantic demonic beasts were all mid-tier demonic beasts. Any one of them was as powerful as a martial artist at True Element Realm LV5. With Ji Tianqing's current strength, he could not even defeat one of the demonic beasts, let alone a dozen of them. Most importantly, he was trapped on a huge rock at the bottom of the cliff. He could neither reach the sky nor the ground. The dozen or so demonic beasts were lying on the edge of the cliff, waiting for him to escape.
I'm dead. Ji Tianqing's face darkened.
The joy of obtaining the red meteorite flower had disappeared immediately. He secretly held the blood dragon sword tightly and stared at the demonic beasts on the cliff. Although the demonic beasts could still restrain their desire to snatch the red meteorite flower, Ji Tianqing was still worried. If he dragged on for too long, the demonic beasts would pounce on him without regard for their lives.
What should he do then? Just then, the ice fox's voice sounded behind him. Old Ji, you only have 2 choices now.
Either you climb up and be eaten by the demonic beasts, or you jump off the cliff and die. However, there are demonic beasts at the bottom of the cliff. In the end, your body may still be eaten.
Ji Tianqing was so angry that his teeth itched.
He shouted angrily, Cut the crap and think of a way.
If I don't live, do you think you can escape?
Of course. The ice fox smiled proudly.
Old Ji, are you stupid? I can fly.
As it spoke, it flapped its little wings proudly and flew around Ji Tianqing.
Ji Tianqing was so angry that he almost vomited blood. He decided to keep quiet so that he would not be angered by the ice fox. He frowned and thought for a while. Then he thought of an idea. Little fox, I'll give you the red meteorite flower. Take it and fly to the top of the mountain. Lure the demonic beasts away. Before he could finish, the ice fox had guessed what he wanted to do. It shook its head and refused. Humph. Don't even think about it. You want me to lure the demonic beasts away? Create an opportunity for you to climb up? Am I that stupid? You! Ji Tianqing was so angry that his chest was blocked. He took a few deep breaths to suppress his anger. At this moment, Little Ice Fox suddenly pointed to the sky and cried out in surprise. Hey, old Ji, look! Big-breasted chick is here to save you. What big-breasted girl? Ji Tianqing glared at it and looked up at the sky. In the sky above the cliff, a huge white spirit crane suddenly flew over. The spirit crane flapped its wings gracefully and slowly descended towards the rocks on the cliff. Although the night was dark, Ji Tianqing could still vaguely see a beautiful woman in a white dress standing on the back of the spirit crane. It was Yun Yao. She stood proudly on the back of the spirit crane, holding a sword with a black scabbard in her left hand. Her waist-length black hair danced in the wind, making her look like a fairy that had descended to the mortal world. There was a commotion among the demonic beasts on the edge of the cliff. They all showed strong hostility and roared at the spirit crane. At this moment, the spirit crane landed in the air 10 feet away from the ground. Yun Yao suddenly made her move. She held the sword with her right hand and pulled out the sword with a clang. In the dark night sky, a 5-feet-long cold light suddenly lit up, like a pool of autumn water. Swish, 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 swish. Yun Yao waved the sword in her hand and slashed out 6 3-feet-long cold sword light towards the demonic beasts in the rocks. The 6 sword light lit up the night sky and instantly flew out 10 feet away, stabbing 6 huge demonic beasts. Bang, 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 muffled sounds were constantly heard, mixed with the miserable cries of many demonic beasts. Cold light flashed in the rocks. Several millstone stones were cut into pieces by the sword light, splashing out countless broken stones. Ji Tianqing could clearly feel that the earth was trembling. There were also several big stones that collapsed from the edge of the cliff and smashed into the bottom of the cliff. Although this was the 3rd time he had seen Yun Yao make a move, he was still shocked. However, he still felt shocked in his heart, and an imperceptible look flashed through his eyes as he looked up at Yun Yao. After a while, the demonic beasts scattered and ran for their lives in panic. Only then did the cliff return to its peaceful state. The crisis was over. Ji Tianqing quickly climbed up the cliff along the vines and returned to the rocks. The spirit crane had landed on the ground and was standing proudly in silence. In the surrounding rocks, there were 6 corpses of middle-ranked demonic beasts. They were all killed by a single sword strike. The beautiful woman in white, Yun Yao, was also standing on a millstone stone in the rocks. Seeing Ji Tianqing climb up from the bottom of the cliff, her beautiful face that was originally as calm as water revealed a trace of astonishment. It's you? Obviously, Yun Yao did not expect to meet Ji Tianqing here. Ji Tianqing walked to 10 meters away from her and stood still. He revealed a gentle smile and nodded. It's me, Miss Yun Yao. We meet again. The little ice fox lay on his shoulder and looked at Yun Yao with a smile. No one knew what it was thinking. Yun Yao glanced at Ji Tianqing and said calmly, I didn't expect that the first person to find the red starflower would be you. Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows. Miss Yun Yao, do you also need this red starflower? Yun Yao nodded calmly. Yes. Tonight, you are determined to get the red starflower? Ji Tianqing asked. Yun Yao was silent for a moment and nodded again. Yes. Ji Tianqing frowned and was puzzled. Why would a top disciple of the Sky Pillar sect like Yun Yao, the #1 genius of the Tianshan region, come to the Taiyi mountain range personally to find the red starflower? Why would a genius like her need a spiritual herb like the red starflower? Or did she have other uses for the red starflower? But no matter what, the red starflower was in his hands and Yun Yao was determined to get it. Therefore, he and Yun Yao were enemies. Ji Tianqing thought about it in silence. Then, he took out the sandalwood box from his bag and walked toward Yun Yao with the box. Seeing this, the little ice fox panicked and shouted, Old Ji, what are you doing? Are you crazy? We risked our lives to get the red starflower. Are you going to give it to her? Hey! Old Ji, calm down. The little ice fox jumped up and down anxiously and shouted at Ji Tianqing to remind him. However, Ji Tianxing turned a deaf ear to it.
He walked toward Yun Yao calmly and handed the sandalwood box to her. Miss Yun Yao, although we all want the red star flower, I won't fight with you. You saved my life in the southern suburbs of the imperial city of the Green Cloud Imperial City. Now, I'll give you this red star flower as a gift to repay you for saving my life. At this moment, Ji Tianxing was standing right in front of Yun Yao. He was so close to her. Yun Yao's beautiful face and big eyes that were as clear as autumn water were so close to him. He could even smell the faint fragrance on Yun Yao's body clearly. However, Ji Tianxing's eyes were not stunned. There was only calmness and calmness. Yun Yao looked at him deeply. Then, she reached out her fair and soft hand and took the sandalwood box. She opened the box and took out the red star flower. However, after she took the red star flower, she plucked all 5 petals without hesitation. She only took the stamen and returned the sandalwood box with the 6 petals to Ji Tianxing. I only need the stamen. I'll return these 6 petals to you. They can still help you improve your cultivation base. After she finished speaking, she kept the stamen of the red star flower and turned to walk toward the spirit crane. She did not seem to exert any force with her legs, but her body flew a few feet into the air and landed on the spirit crane's back as light as snow. The spirit crane let out a clear cry. It immediately spread its wings and flew into the sky, flying away. Chapter 41. Ji Tianxing stood among the rocks, holding the sandalwood box with 6 petals in his hands. He raised his head and looked at Yun Yao's back as she left. Her figure was getting farther and farther away. As the spirit crane flew away, she gradually disappeared into the dark night. Ji Tianxing stood there in a daze for a long time without looking away. At this time, the ice fox picked up a branch from somewhere. It held the branch with its claws and knocked on Ji Tianxing's head. Ji Tianxing suddenly woke up. He turned his head and looked at the ice fox. He shouted angrily, "Little fox, what are you doing?" The ice fox looked at him with disdain and said in an unfriendly tone, "Stop looking. She has left. What are you looking at?" Ji Tianxing was too lazy to respond. He put the sandalwood box into his bag and was about to go down the mountain through the rocks. The ice fox flapped its wings and flew beside him. It asked in a mocking tone, "Ji, do you know her? Do you like her? Do you like her because she is beautiful? Or do you like her breasts and long legs? Ji, I don't want to nag at you. If you like her, go after her. If you can't get her, just pester her. If you keep it in your heart and don't say anything, how will she know that you like her? Ji, I look down on you. Hey Ji, why don't you say anything? Are you still thinking about that chick?" Ji Tianxing wanted to go down the mountain in silence and ignore the ice fox. But he was annoyed by the ice fox's harassment. He couldn't help but shout angrily, "Little fox, shut up." Seeing that he was angry, the ice fox didn't say anything more. It muttered a few words unhappily and went back to sleep in the bag. "Humph, when you saw the big-breasted chick, you looked like you were obsessed with her. You even gave away the red star flower that we tried so hard to find. If that big-breasted chick wasn't so reserved, you wouldn't even have a petal left. Humph, how can a gullible guy like you protect me in the future? I'm really worried about my future." Ji Tianxing was too lazy to explain what had happened to the ice fox. He did not want to explain that he did not want to owe anyone a favor. To explain the meaning of favor to a little fox demon, he felt awkward just thinking about it. He simply hurried on his way in silence, rushing all the way down the mountain. About an hour later, Ji Tianxing arrived at the foot of the mountain and returned to the mountain stream. Now that he had obtained the red star flower, there was no need for him to stay in the Taiyi mountain range and risk his life. He just wanted to leave this place as soon as possible. Even though the Taiyi mountain range was extremely dangerous at night, with countless demonic beasts roaming about. However, Ji Tianxing knew that with the little ice fox's keen 5 senses, she would be able to help him avoid most of the demonic beasts. However, when he followed the mountain stream and walked out of the forest, a cold laugh came from the dark forest not far away. "Haha, I didn't expect that someone would have already obtained the scarlet meteorite flower before all the experts have found it." Suddenly hearing the owl-like cold laugh, Ji Tianxing stopped in his tracks. He looked at the forest vigilantly and secretly held the blood dragon sword tightly. He did not open his mouth to speak. His eyes were searching in the dark forest, and his ears were listening to all the sounds within a radius of 30 meters. In the next moment,
The hoarse and unpleasant voice sounded again. Humph, I'm lucky enough. Not only can I take your head to receive the reward, but I can also get the scarlet meteorite flower. Hee hee hee.
As soon as the voice sounded, 3 cold lights suddenly flew out from the dark forest and shot toward Ji Tianqing like sharp arrows.
Hidden weapons. Ji Tianqing's pupils constricted. With a step, he moved 3 meters away.
At the same time, he waved the blood dragon sword and slashed out a sword light.
Ding ding. 2 crisp sounds burst out.
2 cold lights were slashed by the blood dragon sword and bounced off, landing in the grass.
Another cold light brushed past Ji Tianqing. With an ear-piercing sound, it was nailed into a big tree not far behind him. At the same time, a black figure pounced out from the darkness and silently waved 2 sabers to stab Ji Tianqing's vital parts. The black figure's movements were very swift, like a ghost in the night. He held the 2 sharp sabers tightly in his hands. The blades were also black and would not shine with a cold light to attract attention. Ji Tianqing instantly understood that this black figure was definitely an assassin whose job was to kill people. Swoosh, swoosh. The 2 black sabers were in front of Ji Tianqing. Before the blades arrived, a biting cold force hit his face, causing his cheeks to hurt. At the moment of life and death, his expression was extremely grave. He waved the blood dragon sword with all his might to block the assassin's assassination. Ding ding dang dang. The sabers and swords of both sides clashed several times, producing crisp sounds of metal clashing. Sparks flew from the sabers and swords. Ji Tianqing was also pushed back by the majestic force. His arms were numb and stinging. 3rd level of the true energy realm? Or 4th level? He muttered to himself and roughly judged the black-clothed assassin's strength. Although he did not have much of a chance of winning against an assassin of such strength, he would not be killed so easily. 10 Mysterious Sword Technique. Ji Tianqing clenched his teeth and unleashed his ultimate sword technique with all his strength to fight fiercely with the black-clothed assassin. His muscles swelled up, and his bones made crisp cracking sounds. It was obvious that he had pushed his strength to the limit. The 2 figures kept jumping and moving in the forest. Every time they got close, there would be clashing sounds. It was difficult to tell who was the winner. Ji Tianqing had used up a lot of his strength. He was sweating profusely and his face was pale. Even his left arm had been hit by a saber, leaving behind a chopstick-sized wound. However, he still clenched his teeth and fought with all his might. He would not back down easily. The black-clothed assassin attacked Ji Tianqing continuously for more than 10 moves. His 2 sabers left a few wounds on Ji Tianqing's body, but he still could not kill Ji Tianqing. He was a little impatient. His eyes were bloodshot and turned dark red. In anger, he unleashed all his strength and used a fatal move. Golden Rainbow Slash. He roared with murderous intent. His 2 sabers slashed out 9 pitch-black saber shadows toward Ji Tianqing's 9 vital points. It looked like there was a towering tree behind Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing had nowhere to retreat to due to the saber images. At this critical moment, he did not hesitate to use his trump card. Sword Chi out.
Following his shout, 12 golden sword chis immediately flew out of his body and stabbed towards the black-clothed assassin with a swish swish swish.
The rapidly rotating sword chi collided with the 9 saber shadows, causing a series of crisp sounds to ring out. Although the 9 saber shadows did not dissipate, they were knocked out of their original directions. They all slashed into the towering tree and the grass. In a split second, deep dents were left on the thick tree trunks. Several gullies were also cut into the grass. Dust flew everywhere. Sword chi?
There are actually so many of them?
The black-clothed assassin was stunned. His eyes widened in shock. He already found it unbelievable that a trash in the refinement realm could withstand 30 moves from him. But now, this trash had actually released sword chi, and 12 of them at once. Only experts at the true energy realm level 7 and above could condense the yuan chi in their body into sword chi and release it outside their body to attack. How did this famous trash in the Imperial City do it? Could it be that his strength did not fall to the refinement realm and he was still a genius at the true energy realm level 7? Chapter 42. The black-clothed assassin could not understand, nor did he dare to believe this fact. While he was still in a daze, 12 streaks of sword chi had already arrived in front of him like lightning. Swish! Swish! Sword chi crisscrossed, and a faint golden light flickered in the night sky. The black-clothed assassin's chest, shoulders, and face were instantly pierced with 12 wounds. Dark red blood spurted out from the wounds. When experts exchanged blows, they couldn't afford to be distracted or hesitate. The 12 wounds on his body were the result of being in a daze. Although these injuries were not fatal, the excruciating pain made him suck in a breath of cold air, and his back broke out in cold sweat. The black-clothed assassin flew into a rage, fiercely waving his 2 blades. After shaking off the many sword energies, he charged towards Ji Tianqing. Bastard, die! As the black-clothed assassin pounced over, there was also a thick murderous aura that made people tremble in fear. Ji Tianqing was still calm and composed. He did his best to control the 12-sword qis to block the assassin's attack. In this way, the black-clothed assassin was unable to approach him any longer, and he was surrounded by danger by the numerous sword qi attacks, causing him to be in an extremely sorry state. In a short span of 10 breaths, the black-clothed assassin had been stabbed 37 times, and his body was covered with wounds. Blood gushed out and soaked his clothes, making him look like a bloody person. He looked exceptionally ferocious and terrifying. Even the ferocious Crimson Fire Ape would not be able to withstand such heavy injuries, let alone a 4th-level True Energy Stage assassin in black. The consequence of losing too much blood was that his vision became blurry, his strength quickly dissipated, and his footsteps became even more unsteady. The black-clothed assassin's heart was filled with terror. He no longer had any will to fight and only wanted to turn around and flee. However, Ji Tianqing controlled the 12-sword qis and chased after him, stabbing into his head and neck. The black-clothed assassin barely managed to take 5 steps before he fell to the ground with a plop. He lay on the ground and twitched for a while before he breathed his last. After all, his neck and the back of his head had been pierced by the sword qi, and those were fatal wounds. Fresh blood splattered on the grass, filling the air with a thick stench of blood. When Ji Tianqing saw that the black-clothed assassin was dead, he immediately retracted the 12-sword qis into his body and fell weakly onto the grass. Within a day, he had manipulated the sword qi in his body to fight twice. This greatly exhausted his mental and physical strength, and he was already on the verge of fainting. He closed his eyes and lay on the grass, feeling that every nerve in his body was exhausted. His head was so heavy that he just wanted to sleep. At this moment, the little ice fox flew out from the gloomy forest and landed beside Ji Tianqing. Just now, when Ji Tianqing was fighting with the black-clothed assassin, it saw that the situation was not good and quietly hid in the forest, waiting for the battle to end before coming out. Humph! There are many demonic beasts in the Tai Mountain range that have a grudge against me. I didn't expect you to be hunted down by your enemies as well. Say, how are we going to escape in your current state? The little ice fox sighed and muttered, but its little paws were not idle. It hurriedly took out 2 small jade bottles from its bag and pushed them in front of Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing panted for a while and recovered a little of his strength. He hurriedly opened the small jade bottle and poured out a few elixirs to consume. He closed his eyes and lay down for another 15 minutes. When he heard the roars of demonic beasts coming from all directions, he forced his exhausted body to stand up shakily. The stench of blood on the grass will attract the demonic beasts. We should leave now, he said in a weak voice and carried the bag and the blood dragon sword on his back. With heavy steps, he walked into the darkness. In the next few hours, Ji Tianqing endured his injuries and hurried on with his journey while gritting his teeth. With the help of the little ice fox, he was always able to avoid those dangerous demonic beasts in advance, as well as some warriors who were searching for the red starflower in the mountains. Along the way, there were scares but no mishaps. However, his mental and physical strength were exhausted. Every time he went over a mountain, he had to rest for 15 minutes. During this time, he also ate elixirs and dry rations twice. The long, dark night finally passed. When the first ray of light shone in the morning, Ji Tianqing finally let out a long sigh of relief. He found a cave in the mountains and hid in it to recuperate and rest. He first bandaged the wounds on his body and then circulated his energy to heal the injuries in his body. After treating his injuries, he rested in the cave for another 4 hours. When it was noon, Ji Tianqing finally recovered his strength and 60% of his physical strength. He then left the cave with the little ice fox and rushed towards the exit of the Tai mountain range. After he went over 4 mountains in a row, it was almost evening. He finally returned to the exit of the mountain range and entered the lush valley. When Ji Tianqing was crossing the valley, he met a few warriors who were entering the mountains. These people were all here for the red starflower. Their minds were filled with thoughts of how to find and snatch the red starflower. When they brushed past Ji Tianqing, they only glanced at him casually and did not stop at all. But they would never have thought that the red star flower had been picked long ago and was in Ji Tianqing's possession. When night fell, Ji Tianqing quietly returned to Taiyi town. The town, which had been bustling with noise a few days ago, was quiet at this time and had returned to its usual desolation. After all the warriors who came to look for the red star flower had entered the Taiyi mountain range. Ji Tianqing did not return to the Fortune Inn, nor did he look for his frost and snow-chasing wind horse. Because he knew that the people who wanted to assassinate him and the assassins of the blood-clothed tower must be watching the Fortune Inn. The black-clothed assassin who had tried to assassinate him in the mountains must also be from the blood-clothed tower. He was just wondering in his heart who had hired the blood-clothed tower's assassins to assassinate him. Regarding this question, he vaguely had an answer in his heart, but he was not sure yet. In his current situation, it was impossible for him to investigate this matter. The best choice was of course to return to the imperial city immediately. That night, Ji Tianqing got a horse in the town and left Taiyi town overnight.
For the next 3 days, he galloped on his horse and rushed to the imperial city without stopping under the night and the sky.
After a bumpy journey of 2,000 miles, he finally rushed back to the Ji mansion in the morning of the 3rd day. After returning to the Ji mansion, Ji Tianqing did not have time to report the news to his father and went directly to the breeze courtyard. He told Huan that he would be in seclusion for a few days and that no one should disturb him. Then he entered the secret chamber and prepared to use the power of the red star flower to condense the sword embryo. In the dark secret chamber, the vital energy gathering array was activated and was absorbing the chi of heaven and earth from all directions and gathering it in the center of the array. Ji Tianqing sat cross-legged in the array and held a sandalwood box with both hands. Looking at the 6 silver petals in the box, a gratified smile appeared on his face. His eyes were filled with anticipation. In the past 10 days, he had desperately rushed more than 4,000 miles and almost lost his life several times when he encountered life-threatening situations. Now that he had the red star flower, the running and danger of the past 10 days were all worth it. He could finally condense the sword embryo. I've been waiting for this day for too long. Looking for your support and recommendation tickets, I'm begging everyone. Chapter 43. Ever since he started cultivating the sword heart, Ji Tianqing had been looking forward to this day when he could condense a sword embryo.
With his current strength at the 9th level of the body refinement realm, when he attacked with all his might, his combat power was comparable to a martial artist at the 1st or 2nd level of the true element realm. If he used his trump card and manipulated 12 streaks of sword chi to attack, he could even defeat a martial artist at the 3rd or 4th level of the true element realm. A normal martial artist at the 9th level of the body refinement realm would never be able to do that. This was the extraordinary part of the sword heart Tao. Ji Tianqing had yet to condense a sword embryo, but he already had such a powerful combat power. If he could successfully condense a sword embryo, how powerful would his combat power be? According to the description on the tombstone, only by condensing a sword embryo can one be considered to have stepped into the sword heart Tao and truly enter the world of sword Tao. After I condense a sword embryo, I will be able to embark on a unique sword Tao, Ji Tianqing murmured in a low voice. His expression and eyes were incomparably firm. Success or failure depends on this. He took out 6 red star petals from the box and held them in his palm. He opened his mouth and took a deep breath. The 6 petals immediately turned into streaks of silver light and entered his mouth. Suddenly, a surge of majestic energy exploded in his stomach and rushed to his limbs and bones. Ji Tianqing's face instantly turned red. He felt as if a volcano had erupted in his body. His body immediately became boiling hot and he was drenched in sweat. White steam even rose from his body. Shit! I was too impatient. I took 6 petals at once. I'm afraid my body can't withstand such a terrifying medicinal power. Ji Tianqing cursed in his heart, but there was nothing he could do. Now that things had come to this, he could only grit his teeth and endure it. He hurriedly guided the scorching energy in his body to the meridians in his body. The red star flower grew in the mountains for 60 years and absorbed the essence of the sun, moon, and stars for 60 years. Of course, its energy was majestic and violent. The power of the stars was unfathomable and powerful. Human martial artists did not dare to absorb it. With the weak body of a human, they could only absorb the milder chi of heaven and earth to cultivate. But now, the energy that the red star flower had accumulated for 60 years exploded in Ji Tianqing's body.
How could he withstand it?
TSK. Chi.
After a short while, Ji Tianqing's sweat was pouring down like rain, but it was evaporated into steam by the scorching high temperature, giving rise to puffs of white mist. The extreme pain caused all the muscles in his body to twitch and his bones to emit cracking sounds. His entire body seemed to be distorted and deformed. He could even clearly sense the vast medicinal strength of the scarlet meteorite flower raging within his body and madly destroying his meridians. This caused him both extreme pain and extreme anxiety. Initially, he wanted to consume the red star flower to strengthen his meridians, but he didn't expect that his weak meridians would be completely destroyed, broken and twisted into a mess. What should he do? How was he going to cultivate in the future? Could it be that his martial arts foundation was completely destroyed and he could only be a cripple for the rest of his life? Ji Tianqing's heart was filled with a strong sense of unwillingness and anger. He tried his best to circulate his energy to disperse and guide the vast medicinal efficacy of the scarlet meteorite flower. However, when he managed to disperse the medicinal efficacy of the scarlet meteorite flower, guiding it into dozens of scorching torrents and spreading it to every part of his body, the situation became even worse. Earlier on, the medicinal efficacy of the scarlet meteorite flower had only destroyed his meridians. Now that it had spread to his limbs and bones, it had destroyed all the meridians in his body. Ji Tianqing was filled with despair. He was so angry that he almost vomited blood. However, he was already powerless to stop the medicinal efficacy of the scarlet meteorite flower. He could only allow the meridians in his body to be destroyed. Pfft! He felt a warm sensation in his throat. He couldn't help but open his mouth and spit out a mouthful of hot blood. Following that, the skin all over his body started to crack. Numerous cracks and wounds appeared and countless drops of blood seeped out from them. It's over. My physical body can't withstand the medicinal efficacy. Am I going to explode and die? Ji Tianqing screamed in his heart. His consciousness started to become hazy and blurry. In just a short few minutes, his mental and physical strength were completely exhausted. Intense fatigue surged from the depths of his soul, and he was about to fall asleep. Am I going to die? But I can't accept this. I have yet to avenge the Ling family. I have yet to clear my name as a useless person. I have yet to eliminate the Ji family's internal problems. I have yet to heal my father's injuries. The intense unwillingness in his heart made Ji Tianqing's willpower stubbornly hold on. Although he wasn't unconscious, his consciousness was muddled and he was on the verge of being half asleep. He couldn't even control his own body. He could only sit stiffly in the array and allow the medicinal efficacy of the scarlet meteorite flower to wreak havoc in his body. He didn't know how much time had passed. It could have been a day or a month. His consciousness started to wake up slowly. He realized that the burning pain in his body had disappeared. The violent and scorching medicinal efficacy of the scarlet meteorite flower seemed to have calmed down. He slowly lowered his head and looked at his body. I am not dead yet. I am still alive. Not only was he not dead, but his physical body was also in perfect condition. Ji Tianqing was instantly energized. His eyes lit up with the flames of hope. As long as he was alive, there was still hope. Although his entire body was sore and numb, he could still feel the tearing pain left behind after his meridians were destroyed. However, he endured the pain and lowered his head to size up his body. The black robe he was wearing was covered in a layer of blood and dirt. It had actually become stiff like a piece of mud. He saw that the blood stains on his arms and legs were actually black. His entire body was also covered in a thick layer of dirt. How could this be? Why was the blood I vomited and the blood that flowed out from my wounds black? Ji Tianqing was filled with doubts and couldn't figure it out for now. At this moment, he suddenly felt a numbing sensation all over his body. It was unbearably itchy. However, his entire body was sore and numb. He couldn't move at all. It was wishful thinking to reach out and scratch the itch. Ji Tianqing could only endure the numbness and itchiness and calmly sense the situation in his body. Soon, he realized that the damaged and twisted meridians in his body were actually healing rapidly. The majestic medicinal efficacy of the scarlet meteorite flower was still dormant in his body. It actually turned into countless icy cold streams and wrapped around his meridians. The messy meridians were actually recovering rapidly under the nourishment of the cool medicinal efficacy. Ji Tianqing was stunned. After a while, he recovered and immediately guessed the reason. I understand now. I see. The scarlet meteorite flower is indeed a spirit herb. It actually has such miraculous effects. Haha, is this one of the legendary Martial Dao's strange realms, destruction before establishment? In this world, legend said that there were many kinds of Martial Dao's strange realms that could rapidly increase a martial artist's strength or change a martial artist's talent. For example, bone marrow cleansing, rebirth, destruction before establishment, yin and yang fusion, unity of heaven and man, and so on. They were all Martial Dao's strange realms. However, although the effects of Martial Dao's strange realms were miraculous, they would only appear on top geniuses or martial artists who had obtained great opportunities. Ji Tianqing's current situation was precisely the destruction before establishment in Martial Dao's strange realms. Originally, his meridians were the same as ordinary martial artists. This limited his future achievements in Martial Dao. Even if he was extraordinarily talented and had extremely high comprehension, a genius who far surpassed ordinary martial artists. However, he could at most reach the origin core realm in this lifetime before his potential was exhausted. But it was different now. The medicinal efficacy of the scarlet meteorite flower destroyed his meridians and helped him rebuild them. That's right. It was rebuilding his meridians and not strengthening them. After rebuilding his meridians, he had even more powerful potential and talent. His future achievements in Martial Dao would definitely be extraordinary. I'll continue to update today. There are a total of 4 chapters. Brothers and sisters, please support me by bookmarking and recommending me. Everyone can also leave a comment. Remember to leave a 5-star review. Please, brothers. Chapter 44. Ji Tianqing had read many martial arts manuals and understood the wonders of martial arts. It was a pity that martial arts was like a legend to him, unreachable. He never dared to imagine that one day, he would encounter a martial arts wondrous realm, destruction followed by re-establishment. He knew the extraordinary effects of destruction followed by re-establishment. Of course, he was excited and his eyes shone brightly. Destruction followed by re-establishment. Previously, my energy center was destroyed and I couldn't return to the true energy realm. I was the biggest laughingstock in Qingyun country. But from today onwards, I have potential that ordinary people can't reach. I will definitely have greater martial arts achievements and become an even more dazzling genius than before. Breaking out of the cocoon and becoming a butterfly, soaring to the sky. After a long time, Ji Tianqing finally calmed down. He calmed his heart and felt the changes in his meridians. He watched as the red meteorite flower reconstructed his meridians. No wonder so many forces and experts want to get their hands on the red meteorite flower. Such a spiritual herb that seizes the fortune of heaven and earth and gathers the essence of the sun and moon is really rare. The sun represents the yang while the moon represents the yin. The combination of the sun and the moon is the combination of yin and yang. That's why it has such a miraculous effect. When I first consumed the red meteorite flower, the yang potency destroyed my meridians. Now, the yin potency is reconstructing my meridians. In that case, the martial arts wondrous realm I have today is not only destruction followed by re-establishment but also the combination of yin and yang. At the thought of this, Ji Tianqing's eyes flashed with astonishment. He was even more surprised. Just the destruction before establishment, realm of the martial way alone was enough to make him a martial way genius. If he had the combination of yin and yang, which was even rarer, wouldn't he become a top genius? Ji Tianqing was excited and full of anticipation for the future. He believed that the day of revenge and cleansing his humiliation was not far away. However, all of this was based on the fact that he could condense the sword embryo. Once the sword embryo was formed, he could look forward to the unparalleled sword Dao and his future would be bright. If he couldn't condense the sword embryo, all of his fantasies and expectations would just be an illusion. Time flew by and 12 hours passed quickly. Ji Tianqing's numbness disappeared and his meridians were completely reconstructed. The majestic medicinal power of the red star flower also lay dormant in his body, filling his limbs and bones, slowly strengthening his physical body. He tried to cultivate and absorb the qi of heaven and earth in the array formation. As expected, the boundless qi of heaven and earth entered his body like small streams flowing into a great river. After the reconstruction, his meridians had become wider and more resilient, allowing him to circulate his qi without any hindrance. If his meridians were like small streams in the past, then his current meridians were like rivers. Great! With the current strength of my meridians,
There is at least an 80% chance that I will succeed if I channel the sword chi and condense the sword embryo.
After Ji Tianqing was done with his preparations, he could not wait to circulate his energy to control the sword chi and try to condense the sword embryo. Earlier in the Taiyi mountain range, he'd forced the sword chi out of his body many times to fight, so he was already very familiar with controlling the 12 strands of sword chi. Now, he was controlling the sword chi to enter his meridians and swim towards his dantian. Not only were the reconstructed meridians wider, they were also tougher, enough to withstand the sharp and fierce sword chi. However, when the sword chi swam in his meridians, he still felt a piercing pain. But this level of pain was not a problem for him. After 15 minutes, Ji Tianqing successfully moved the sword chi from his Huizong acupoint to his dantian. The toothpick-like faint golden sword chi floated in the black hole in his dantian, calm and steady. He had finally taken the first step to success. Ji Tianqing was in high spirits. He circulated the sword chi from his yang chi acupoint to enter his meridians and flow towards his dantian. After 15 minutes, the second sword chi reached his dantian and floated in the black hole. Subsequently, Ji Tianqing activated the third, fourth, and fifth strands of sword chi. 6 hours had passed. The sword chi from his 12 acupoints had all gathered in the black hole in his dantian. He was only one step away from success. The last step was to fuse the 12 strands of sword chi and condense the sword embryo. Ji Tianqing was neither arrogant nor rash.
He carefully and steadily circulated the way of the heart of the sword and started to fuse the sword chi.
This process was very difficult and did not allow for the slightest mistake. He had enough patience and perseverance to fuse the sword chi one after another, and condense the embryonic form of the sword embryo. The secret chamber was silent and time passed quietly. After 16 hours, he finally fused the 12 strands of sword chi and condensed them into a small golden sword the size of a little finger. The sword embryo was finally condensed successfully. From now on, this small golden sword would be the source of his power, his dantian. He had finally laid the foundation of the way of the heart of the sword and successfully stepped into the door of the supreme sword principle. He was not far from the way of the heart of the sword. At this moment, Ji Tianqing's emotions were surging and his blood was boiling. He revealed a gratified smile. He had endured so much humiliation and experienced so many life and death situations, but it was all worth it. Ji Tianqing stopped and ended his closed-door cultivation. He forced himself to endure the weakness in his body and the hunger in his stomach as he walked out of the secret chamber. After returning to his room, he hurriedly called for his maid, Huan Er. Huan Er opened the door and entered. When she saw Ji Tianqing's appearance, she was shocked. "Eldest young master, you've only been in closed-door cultivation for 2 days. How did you become like this?" She saw that Ji Tianqing's hair was messy like a chicken's nest. The black robe on his body was covered with blood and stains. His face and arms were also full of black mud. His miserable appearance was similar to that of a beggar who had not bathed for many years. Ji Tianqing was in a good mood. He smiled and waved his hand. "Huan Er, don't ask. Quickly prepare hot water. I want to bathe and change my clothes. Also, go to the kitchen and prepare a table of food. Young master is starving." Huan Er suppressed the doubts in her heart and did not ask any more questions. She hurriedly prepared hot water and food. After 2 hours, Ji Tianqing washed off the dirt on his body and changed into a clean set of clothes. He returned to his handsome and elegant appearance. Moreover, his physical body had been cleansed by the red star flower's medicinal power. His body had become more well-proportioned and perfect. His skin was also sparkling like jade. When Huan Er served him the meal, her eyes always secretly glanced at him. Her face was slightly red and she secretly thought, "Why is it that after 2 days of closed-door cultivation, young master is not only refreshed and in a good mood, but even his skin has become so beautiful?" She could also feel that the confident temperament of the young master had returned. In fact, he was even more glowing than when he was the #1 genius in the imperial city. Although the large table of food was quickly disappearing, she felt that the young master's eating movements were more elegant and imposing than before. After a while, Ji Tianqing finished the entire table of food. Only then did he leave with satisfaction. After leaving Cool Breeze Courtyard, he rushed to Second Courtyard's martial arts hall to test his current strength. Chapter 45. It was noon. The scorching sun hung high in the sky and the air was hot and dry.
The square outside the martial arts hall was empty. The Ji family disciples would not practice martial arts under the scorching sun. Ji Tianqing stepped into the martial arts hall. Seeing that there was no one in the hall, he walked to the high platform in the corner. Looking at the engraved stone pillar in front of him, he felt a little uneasy. Although he had condensed the sword embryo, the path of the sword heart was different from that of ordinary people.
It was unheard of. He wasn't sure if his current strength had reached the true energy realm. Only by using the psychic stone pillar could he prove his conjecture. After taking a deep breath, he pressed his palm on the stone pillar and activated the primordial qi in his body. Suddenly, the golden sword embryo released a powerful primordial qi that went through his palm and into the psychic stone pillar. The black lines on the stone pillar reacted and lit up with 2 crimson rays. The crimson rays represented the true energy realm and the 2 lines represented the second level. True energy realm, second level? Ji Tianqing immediately raised his eyebrows and revealed an incredulous look. His heartbeat also accelerated a little. I guessed right. The sword embryo is my dantian. I have condensed the sword embryo, which is equivalent to the true energy realm. But why did I skip true energy realm level 1 and reach true energy realm level 2 when I just condensed the sword embryo? His heart was filled with shock and disbelief. No matter who it was, to advance from the body refining realm to the true energy realm, they would first reach true energy realm level 1. After diligent training they could advance to level 2, then level 3, level 4. This was common knowledge in martial arts. Even a 7 or 8-year-old child knew it. However, Ji Tianqing had directly jumped from body refining realm level 9 to true energy realm level 2, breaking this common knowledge. How could he not be shocked? After a while, Ji Tianqing retracted his palm and calmed down. He frowned and thought for a while, then guessed the reason. A true energy realm level 1 martial artist usually has to train hard for 2 years and accumulate enough primordial qi to advance to level 2. I have cultivated the path of the sword heart and condensed the sword embryo. The primordial qi in my body is many times stronger than normal martial artists. That must be why I jumped to level 2. This is because the path of the sword heart is extraordinary, and the red star flower helped me reconstruct my meridians and increase my cultivation. Ji Tianqing was relieved.
Now that his strength had been verified by the psychic stone pillar, the last trace of hesitation in his heart had vanished. From today onwards, he would cultivate the sword heart Tao with all his might and advance forward courageously. After leaving the martial arts hall, he prepared to return to the breezy courtyard. Along the way he suddenly thought, after I came back, I locked it in the room. I didn't ask Huan to take care of it. I don't know how it is now. Back in the room, he closed the door and opened a wooden cabinet in the corner. He opened the door and saw the ice fox curled up in the cupboard, sleeping soundly.
Wake up, little fox. I brought you something nice to eat.
As he spoke, he extended his finger and poked the little ice fox's head. The ice fox opened its eyes and glanced at him casually, then looked at the fruit in the basket.
Leave it there. I'll eat it when I'm hungry. Its tone was a little lazy.
After it finished speaking, it lay down and went back to sleep.
Ji Tianqing frowned and looked at it carefully.
The ice fox's fur was shiny and it was full of energy. It was not as listless and hungry as he had imagined. Ji Tianqing coldly snorted, pointed at it and asked, Little fox, tell me honestly, have you been stealing food these past 2 days? The ice fox opened its eyes and whispered, I only went to the kitchen to eat a roasted chicken.
Old Ji, don't make a fuss, okay? Ji Tianqing did not believe it.
He sneered,
Look at the oil on your mouth. Are you sure you ate one?
The ice fox raised its head and smiled at him.
Okay. I admit it. I ate a total of 46 roasted chickens these 2 days.
But old Ji, your house is so extravagant.
It's not a big deal for me to eat a few roasted chickens when I'm hungry, right?
It glanced at Ji Tianqing's face and whispered, Old Ji, you can't be so stingy, right?
Ji Tianqing frowned and said unhappily, It's not a big deal for you to eat secretly. I'm just worried that you'll cause trouble in the mansion.
That's right.
Tell me honestly.
Did you cause any trouble these 2 days?
The ice fox was speechless. Its silver eyes rolled around. It was obvious that it was going to lie. Ji Tianqing saw through its thoughts.
He sneered and asked, Tell me, what did you do? The ice fox shrank its body and pretended to be timid.
Old Ji, don't be nervous. I was bored.
I peeked at a few maids bathing and glanced at a few guards practicing their swordsmanship. You perverted fox! How dare you do such a shameless thing?
Ji Tianqing was so angry that he laughed.
He raised his hand and was about to slap it.
The ice fox quickly shrank into the corner of the cupboard. In a hurry it explained, Old Ji, calm down. We're all girls. It's not a big deal to look at them. It's not like I'll get pregnant. What did you say?
Ji Tianqing's hand stopped in mid-air.
Nothing, nothing. The ice fox waved its paws and changed the topic. Old Ji, don't always call me a little fox. It sounds like I'm really a fox. You can call me Qian Yu, Qian, Yu, or whatever. Also, you promised to protect me and take care of me. How can you make me hide in the cupboard? I also want to live in a spacious and comfortable house. I also want a lot of delicious food. Ji Tianqing's anger dissipated.
He nodded and said, Qian Yu?
Are you sure you want such a girly name? I'll just call you Qian. You stay here and rest well. Don't run around. I'll find a place for you to stay.
After comforting the ice fox, he left the breezy courtyard and went to look for his father, Ji Chongkong. When he saw his father, Ji Chongkong was handling business matters in the study. When he saw Ji Tianqing enter the study in high spirits, the tiredness on Ji Chongkong's face dissipated and was replaced by a heartfelt smile.
Tianqing, you're done with your seclusion? How was it? Was the journey to the Taiyi Mountains to look for the red star flower smooth? Did you get the red star flower? Ji Tianqing walked to his father's side. After bowing, he sat down and started chatting with his father.
Father, although there were many twists and turns and dangers on this trip to the Taiyi Mountains, I survived them all. I've got the red star flower. After 2 days of seclusion, I've refined all of its medicinal power. Now, I've recovered from my dantian and returned to the true energy realm.
When he heard the news, Ji Chongkong's face lit up with joy.
He could not help but say, Good.
That's great. Tianqing, you've returned to the past. You didn't let me down. Chapter 46. Ji Chongkong did not linger on power and wealth. His life's work and hopes were pinned on Ji Tianqing. When Ji Tianqing's cultivation was crippled, Ji Chongkong was extremely worried and angry. His hair turned gray overnight, and his internal injuries relapsed, causing him to vomit blood. Now, Ji Tianqing had finally returned to the true energy realm. How could he not be overwhelmed with emotions? How could he not be excited? After a long time, Ji Chongkong's emotions calmed down. He looked thoughtful and said in a deep voice, Tianqing, although you have returned to the true energy realm, this news should be kept a secret for the time being. If our enemies know that you have recovered your strength, they will not be able to sleep and eat in peace. They will definitely do everything they can to deal with you. Ji Tianqing nodded and said with a dignified expression, Father is right. I came to you today to report this matter. When I was in Tai Town, I was attacked by a black-clothed assassin and almost lost my life. I have investigated and found that the black-clothed assassin was from the blood-clothed tower. Ji Chongkong's eyes suddenly turned cold and he shouted angrily, Blood-clothed tower? How dare they assassinate you? It's just an assassin organization in the cloud state. How dare they attack my Ji clan? After a pause, he said in a deep voice with murderous intent, Tianqing, you don't have to worry about this. I will send someone to investigate this matter and find out who is behind it. As for the blood-clothed tower, my Ji clan's experts will flatten it within a month.
Humph. Probably because my Ji clan has been hiding our strength for so many years that the major forces in Qingyun country have forgotten the bloody means of my Ji clan's Shadow Sword Hall.
Hearing this, Ji Tianqing was also shocked, and a cold smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. If Shadow Sword Hall takes action, the blood-clothed tower will be destroyed. 10 years ago, Ji Chongkong and Lord Sword Master fought at the Ultimate Sword Peak and lost due to internal injuries. Since then, the Ji clan had kept a low profile. However, as one of the 4 great clans, how could any force provoke the Ji clan? If the Ji clan did not have strong martial strength, how could they occupy half of the forging world in Qingyun country? The Shadow Sword Hall was a secret weapon of the Ji clan. Ji Chongkong was personally in charge of the Shadow Sword Hall. The 2 vice hall masters under him were both experts at the 4th stage of the profound comprehending stage. The 36 sword envoys were all at the True Energy Stage 9. This powerful secret team had secretly helped the Ji clan resolve countless crises and eliminated countless enemies. Ji Tianqing knew that his father was really angry, so he sent the Sword Shadow Hall to raise the blood-clothed tower to the ground. As for the person behind the scenes who hired the blood-clothed tower assassins to assassinate him, he was bound to surface soon.
After discussing this matter, Ji Tianqing said with a grave expression, "Father, when I was in Tai Town, I encountered an even more troublesome matter.
I met Su Zifeng from the mysterious sword workshop in the eastern suburbs. He actually stole the workshop's mysterious level treasure sword and secretly traded it with someone. After I saw through this matter, Su Zifeng and his entourage swore that they would rather die than confess. Su Zifeng even committed suicide to avoid punishment." Ji Chongkong's expression became gloomy again.
He asked in a low voice, "Is there such a thing?"
Su Zifeng's strength is low, and he acts cautiously. He is also loyal to the Ji clan. Since he did such a thing, there must be someone behind him. The mysterious sword workshop in the eastern suburbs is under the control of second brother, Ji Ruffing. This matter must have something to do with him. Ji Chongkong frowned and pondered for a moment. He then asked Ji Tianqing for a few more details.
After getting the answer, he whispered in a low voice, "Could it be that I've been too active recently and pushed them too hard? So he sent Su Zifeng away from the imperial city and hid in Yunzhou to do the trade?"
"Tianqing, I'll investigate this matter immediately. I want to check the accounts of the workshop in the eastern suburbs and see what Ji Ruffing has been doing behind the scenes." Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said with some concern, "Father, if second uncle is really disloyal, he will definitely fall out with you. You must pay attention to your safety." "Also, I came here today for another matter." Ji Chongkong asked, "Tell me, what is it?" "Father, among the heirlooms of our Ji clan, is there a top-grade mysterious level treasure called the 100 Treasures Brocade Pouch?"
Ji Chongkong was startled for a moment, then he revealed a gentle smile and nodded. "There is indeed such an item.
This treasure is the fruit of your grandfather and 12 master blacksmiths' hard work. They spent 2 years of time and effort and used materials worth 8 million taels of silver. This item looks like a palm-sized brocade pouch on the surface, but there is actually a universe inside. There is a mysterious space that is as big as a study and can store many things." When this item was refined, even the imperial clan was tempted.
"The emperor even wanted to confer your grandfather the title of duke and give him a city in exchange for the 100 Treasures Brocade Pouch, but your grandfather refused."
Speaking of the 100 Treasures Brocade Pouch, Ji Chongkong's face was filled with pride. Ji Tianqing heard that the 100 Treasures Brocade Pouch was so precious and hesitated for a moment before asking, "Father, I want that 100 Treasures Brocade Pouch. I have an urgent need." He was racking his brains to think of an excuse to explain himself. He didn't expect Ji Chongkong to agree without hesitation. "Tianqing, although the 100 Treasures Brocade Pouch is priceless and incomparably precious, if you want to use it, I will go get it for you." Seeing Ji Tianqing's strange expression, he patted Ji Tianqing's shoulder and smiled. "Tianqing, you don't need to explain anything. Father understands that you have your own plans and ideas. Not to mention a mere 100 Treasures Brocade Pouch, all of the Ji clan's wealth will be yours in the future." With that, Ji Chongkong left the study and returned to the secret room in his residence to retrieve the 100 Treasures Brocade Pouch. A quarter of an hour later, he brought the 100 Treasures Brocade Pouch back to the study and handed it over to Ji Tianqing. He also told him how to use it. Ji Tianqing accepted the 100 Treasures Brocade Pouch and thanked his father before bowing and leaving. After returning to his room in the breeze courtyard, he closed the door and carefully studied the 100 Treasures Brocade Pouch. On the surface, this dark red 100 Treasures Brocade Pouch was not much different from an ordinary pouch. Rich people would always have one hanging on their waist. However, in reality, the 100 Treasures Brocade Pouch was made of a very special material. It was impervious to fire and water, and it would not be damaged by blades or axes. Moreover, after Ji Tianqing opened the 100 Treasures Brocade Pouch, he saw that there was indeed a room as big as a study inside. There was nothing in the room, so he installed a bed, a table, and some bedding in the room. Then, he took out Qian Yu and threw it into the 100 Treasures Brocade Pouch. Even though Qian Yu was knowledgeable and considered itself to be of noble status, after seeing such a wondrous 100 Treasures Brocade Pouch, it was filled with shock and curiosity. It jumped up and down in the room as if it was having a lot of fun. It was very satisfied with this room and praised Ji Tianqing, which was a rare occurrence. Chapter 47. Although giving Qian Yu the priceless 100 treasures brocade pouch was a very extravagant thing to do, but to Ji Tianxing, this was undoubtedly the best choice. Bringing Qian Yu around all day was too eye-catching.
After all, it was a sly and cunning fellow that could speak.
After settling Qian Yu down, Ji Tianxing tied the 100 treasures brocade pouch to his belt and entered the secret chamber. Sitting in the middle of the yuan gathering array, he calmly pondered about his next cultivation. The sword embryo has been successfully condensed, and my strength has reached the second level of the true energy realm. Next, I should focus on cultivating and accumulating yuan qi according to the route carved on the second tombstone. The most important way for an ordinary true energy realm martial artist to increase their strength was to continuously cultivate and absorb the yuan qi of heaven and earth to transform it into true energy. The stronger the true energy accumulated in the energy center, the stronger one's strength would be. Ji Tianxing did not have an energy center and was different from ordinary martial artists. His cultivation method was also different. But the sword embryo was his energy center, and he had to absorb the yuan qi of heaven and earth to strengthen the sword embryo. The words carved on the second tombstone in Kenshin's tomb were the second level of the path of the sword. He needed to cultivate according to a specific route and continuously accumulate yuan qi to strengthen the sword embryo. Besides that, he also remembered the words carved on the third tombstone. It was also the cultivation method of the true energy realm. That was the third level of the path of the sword. It mentioned the 9 main meridians and the method to refine the sword meridians. This was different from the cultivation method of an ordinary true energy realm martial artist. Ji Tianxing thought for a while and decided to enter the Kenshin's tomb again to see if the words on the tombstone had changed. He closed his eyes and focused his consciousness on the black hole in his energy center. Swoosh! His consciousness was immediately swallowed by the black hole and entered the Kenshin's tomb. It was still a dark and cold space, surrounded by fog and filled with the aura of death. Ji Tianxing's consciousness condensed into a translucent human figure and floated forward, heading straight for the gigantic sword steel. After a while, he arrived at the pitch-black sword steel. He did not know if it was an illusion, but he felt that the sword steel's aura was sharper and more domineering. His strength had increased by several times, but he felt like his body was covered by needles when he was enveloped by the sword steel's sharp aura. He subconsciously raised his head to look at the sword steel and frowned. The words Tomb of the Sword God on the huge sword steel were actually faintly glowing with a blood-red light. But he clearly remembered that the last 2 times he came to the Tomb of the Sword God, he saw that the 4 words were gray. Moreover, he could clearly sense that the originally cold and deathly still sword steel actually had a trace of spirit energy surrounding it. Even though that trace of invisible spiritual qi was somewhat weak, it was real. Ji Tianxing felt a little strange and couldn't help but frown. How could this be? There is Yu to Yu. He suddenly remembered that in the Xianbing cave in the Taiyi Mountains, it was Kenshin's tomb that had saved his life and swallowed Qian Yu's life. At that time, he was very puzzled. Where did Qian Yu's power go when it was swallowed by the black hole? Now that he saw the changes in the sword steel and felt the invisible spirit qi surrounding it, he vaguely guessed the result. So, Qian Yu's life's power was most likely swallowed by this sword steel? This was only his guess and conjecture. He could not verify it for the time being. Forget it. Let's talk about this later. Let's take a look at my cultivation method first. He turned and walked towards the 9 tombstones on the left side of the sword steel. The 9 black tombstones had not changed. They still stood in the wilderness, exuding an ancient aura. But Ji Tianxing found that the second tombstone had also become blank. The words engraved on it had disappeared. The second level of the Way of the Sword has also disappeared. Then my understanding should be correct. Next, I will follow the cultivation method and work hard to accumulate spirit qi and improve my strength. He looked at the third tombstone. The words on the tombstone were still there. This was the cultivation method of the third level of the Way of the Sword. Ji Tianxing studied it seriously for a while and confirmed that he had not understood it wrongly. He indeed had to use spirit qi to refine the 9 main meridians into a sword vein. When he finished cultivating the third level of the cultivation method, he should break through the vital energy realm and reach the mystic comprehending realm. Of course, that should be a long time in the future. He recalled the words about the Way of the Sword on the first tombstone. He could not help but sigh and murmured in a low voice. Although I have reached the second level of the Way of the Sword, I don't know when I can reach the state of having no sword in my hand and the sword in my heart. Just as he finished speaking, a deep, heavy and ancient voice suddenly sounded in his ears. Lowly human,
can actually cultivate the way of the sword? It was a deep voice that seemed to belong to a middle-aged man. His tone was full of surprise. Ji Tianqing was stunned and quickly turned his head to look behind him.
Who's talking?
The ancient voice resounded once more, and its tone was filled with arrogance and disdain. Human boy, with your talent, I'm afraid it's impossible for you to reach the 9th level of the way of the sword in this lifetime. It's wishful thinking to reach the state of the sword heart.
However, Ji Tianqing wasn't angry.
Instead, he stared at the black sword steel with a burning gaze.
This time, he heard it clearly. The voice came from the black sword tombstone. You're talking. Who are you?
The voice from the black sword tombstone was silent for a while.
It seemed to be thinking or recalling. After a while, the voice sounded again.
I am the sword soul, the soul of the godly sword. Yes, I am the sword soul, the burial of heaven.
Ji Tianqing's eyes widened.
His heart was full of shock and disbelief.
Sword soul? The burial of heaven?
The Ji family was a family of blacksmiths, but he had never heard that a weapon had a soul and could think and speak. This was even more ridiculous than myths and legends. What's more, this sword soul was called the burial of heaven.
Wasn't this too domineering?
I've been here twice before, and this sword soul didn't move. Now that the sword tombstone has swallowed Qianqian's lifetime cultivation, it's surrounded by spiritual energy.
The sword soul has appeared. Ji Tianqing thought for a while.
Then, he asked tentatively, Sword soul, the burial of heaven, were you sleeping before? Did you wake up after swallowing Qianqian's lifetime cultivation? The burial of heaven was surprised. How can a lowly human possess such wisdom?
Human boy, I didn't expect you to be able to guess this.
Haha.
Interesting little guy.
The other party's tone was very arrogant. It was as if it was looking down on all living things.
Ji Tianqing frowned slightly, but he didn't say anything.
Because he knew that this sword soul, the burial of heaven, must have an extraordinary origin. He looked up at the black sword tombstone and asked again, Sword soul, the burial of heaven, you said that humans can't practice the way of the sword heart? Can you tell me the origin and mystery of the way of the sword heart? The burial of heaven said coldly, that little beast's cultivation is too weak.
It can only wake me up for a short while.
I don't have time to waste with you on the way of the sword heart. Try to comprehend it yourself. What realm you can reach will depend on your luck.
I'm going to continue sleeping.
After that, the ancient and distant voice disappeared.
Ji Tianqing called a few times.
The burial of heaven didn't respond. He could only give up and leave the Kenshin's tomb.
Swoosh!
The gray fog space and the Kenshin's tomb immediately disappeared.
His consciousness returned to his body.
After calming down, he prepared to practice the second level of the way of the sword heart. After activating the elemental gathering array, the chi of heaven and earth from all directions was attracted by the array and gathered in the secret room. Ji Tianqing glanced at the 4 big boxes in the corner of the secret room. He immediately remembered that the little Princess Ku had given him those things. They were cultivation resources worth 5 million taels of silver. There were more than a dozen origin-level cultivation techniques and sword Dao manuals. There were also many elixirs and materials. He took out 4 elemental condensing pills from one of the boxes. These were top-grade origin-level elixirs. They were most suitable for true energy realm martial artists. They could provide a large amount of true energy and quickly increase a martial artist's strength. After Ji Tianqing took the 4 elemental condensing pills, he began to cultivate the second level of the way of the sword heart.
The elemental condensing pills were quickly refined.
Boundless true energy gushed out and flowed rapidly in his body. He focused on cultivating. He guided the true energy into his meridians and circulated it through his body according to a fixed route. Finally, it gathered in the sword embryo in his dantian.
This was effective.
The sword embryo was replenished by the true energy and began to grow stronger.
Chapter 48. The night passed very quickly.
The next morning, Ji Tianqing ended his cultivation and walked out of the secret chamber. His sword embryo had grown by 30%, and his cultivation had greatly improved. His strength had also increased by a lot. He had just finished his breakfast and was about to continue his closed-door cultivation when suddenly came to report that little Princess Cuckoo was here again. Ji Tianqing was stunned for a moment. Then his lips curled into a playful smile. Looking at the time, She has indeed returned to the Imperial City. However, she went to the Taiyi mountain range to look for the red meteorite flower, but it was a wasted trip. I'm afraid she came today for this matter? As he thought about this, he walked to the courtyard to welcome Xueqi's arrival. After a while, Xueqi, who was wearing a light yellow dress, walked into the courtyard with an imperial guard. She was still dressed adorably today, but there was a hint of anger and tiredness on her face. She was pouting, obviously unhappy. Big brother Tianqing, I'm back. She greeted Ji Tianqing, entered the room, and sat down. She said in a low mood, Big brother Tianqing, I'm sorry to have made you wait for so long. I was a step too late and didn't manage to snatch the red meteorite flower. I've disappointed you. Ji Tianqing already knew the result, so of course he wasn't disappointed. He smiled and comforted her. It's okay, Xueqi. I'm already very grateful for your concern. The little princess was still very depressed. She muttered angrily, It's all my uncle's fault. He's too despicable. He actually snatched the red meteorite flower. After he consumed the red meteorite flower, he went into closed-door cultivation for 2 days and actually repaired his dantian. His strength has reached the true energy realm. Ji Tianqing's expression changed, and he frowned. Xueqi, your uncle snatched the red meteorite flower? You mean Luoyan King Jiling? Yes, who else could it be? The little princess nodded, and the expression on her face became even more depressed. Royal uncle is the same as my royal grandfather. His dantian was damaged, and he could not cultivate Zhan Yuan for the rest of his life. He could only stay in the body refinement realm. He had long coveted the scarlet meteorite flower. He controls the Luo and Yan prefectures and has recruited so many experts. Of course, it would be easy for him to obtain the scarlet meteorite flower. It's a pity that I was a step too late. Otherwise, I would have definitely snatched the scarlet meteorite flower. Ji Tianqing silently listened to the little princess grumbling, but his heart was filled with shock and doubt. The fact that Luoyan King Jiling's dantian was innately damaged was no secret. Most people knew about it. It was reasonable for Jiling to want to use the red star flower to repair her damaged dantian. However, Ji Tianqing knew very well that there was only one red star flower. The people who had obtained the red star flower were him and Yun Yao, not little Prince Jiling. Therefore, when he heard the little princess's words, he immediately thought of Yun Yao. Could it be that Yun Yao gave the stamen of the red star flower to Jiling after taking it from me? When he thought of this, he felt inexplicably stifled. He probed the little princess and asked, Xueqi, how did you know about this? Where did your royal uncle get the red star flower? Was it given to him by someone? The little princess was simple-minded and had complete trust in Ji Tianqing. Therefore, she did not notice anything strange. She answered truthfully, yesterday, there was news from the Spirit Fire Palace. Only then did I know that royal uncle had been cultivating in seclusion for 2 days. He had already repaired his dantian and reached the true energy realm. I guessed that he must have consumed the red star flower, so I went to the Spirit Fire Palace to question him. He admitted it himself that he had consumed the red star flower. As for the origin of the red star flower, he said that the experts under him had snatched it. After that, I also secretly investigated it. That was indeed the case. Many experts in the Spirit Fire Palace can testify. When he heard this, Ji Tianqing's expression became even more serious. The doubts in his heart grew even more. With Yun Yao's status, there's no way she would personally go to Taiyi mountain range to help the little prince snatch the red star flower. The little prince clearly did not obtain the red star flower, but he said that the experts under him had snatched it. He must be lying. But why would he lie and even announce this to the public? Could it be the little prince was only using the red star flower as an excuse to hide the real reason why he had repaired his dantian and reached the true energy realm? With Ji Tianqing's intellect, he was able to analyze the crux of the problem in a short period of time. When he guessed this point, a thought suddenly flashed through his mind. He remembered something. If the little prince did not consume the red star flower, then how did he repair his dantian? The God-seizing pearl. Yes, the God-seizing pearl has this effect. Perhaps, after Ling Yunfei dug out the God-seizing pearl from my body, she did not refine it and gave it to the little prince instead? The little prince had been hiding this all this time. When the red star flower appeared, he finally found an excuse to deliberately lie and release this news. If that's really the case, then besides Ling Yunfei, wouldn't the little prince, Jiling,
also be involved in plotting against me? When he thought of this, Ji Tianqing felt a chill run down his spine. Unparalleled fury and murderous intent surged from his heart. He had already secretly decided that he would find a chance to test Ling Yunfei's abilities. Then his deductions and suspicions would be confirmed.
At this moment, the little princess noticed that he had been silent and his expression was very gloomy.
She could not help but ask, "Big brother Tianqing, what's wrong? Are you all right?" Ji Tianqing snapped out of his daze.
He suppressed the fury and murderous intent in his heart and calmly shook his head.
The little princess looked very guilty. She tugged at his arm and said softly, "Big brother Tianqing, I'm sorry. I didn't manage to snatch the red star flower and couldn't help you. But don't worry, Big brother Tianqing. I'll think of other ways to help you. Don't be discouraged. I believe that there must be other ways to help you recover your abilities." Ji Tianqing nodded and revealed a trace of a smile. "Don't worry, Cuckoo. I won't give up so easily. Moreover, I'm already slowly recovering. Don't worry about me."
Regarding the matter of him obtaining the red star flower and recovering his abilities of the true energy realm, of course, he had to keep it a secret.
Although he trusted the little princess very much, this was his secret and he could not reveal it for the time being. The little princess chatted with him for a while and gave him a few words of concern before leaving with the guards. Ji Tianqing sent the little princess out of the cool breeze courtyard and returned to his room with a gloomy expression. He decided to quickly investigate the whereabouts of the god-seizing pearl and find a chance to test Ling Yunfei's abilities.
If things were really as he guessed and the little prince and the Ling family joined hands to deal with him, then he would face unimaginable danger.
Even the Ji family would be implicated. Ji Tianqing pondered for a while before taking out a pen and paper to personally write a letter.
After sealing it with wax, he handed it to the guards at the entrance of the courtyard.
"Send this letter to the Ling family. You must personally hand it to Ling Yunfei." "Understood." The middle-aged guard respectfully cupped his fists and accepted the order. He carefully kept the letter. Then he left the cool breeze courtyard and immediately rushed to the Ling family. Ji Tianqing returned to his room and entered the secret room to cultivate. He had already made an appointment with Ling Yunfei to meet alone at the plum garden in the western suburbs of the imperial city. At that time, he would test Ling Yunfei's abilities. But before that, he still had to cultivate for a few hours to increase his abilities, just in case. In the Ling family residence, in a quiet and elegant courtyard, under the luxuriant banyan tree, a beautiful young girl and a white-robed youth were sitting opposite each other at the stone table. The young girl in a light green dress was Ling Yunfei, and the white-robed youth with a feminine temperament was the little prince. The two of them chatted while drinking tea. Ling Yunfei let out a charming laugh from time to time. Suddenly, the young guard at the entrance of the courtyard walked into the courtyard and quickly walked to Ling Yunfei's side.
After bowing, the young guard handed over a letter with a respectful expression.
"Eldest miss, the Ji family sent someone to deliver this letter. They said that they must give it to you." "A letter from the Ji family?" Ling Yunfei raised her eyebrows and a playful sneer appeared on her lips. She reached out and took the letter.
There were no words on the letter. She glanced at the little prince before opening the letter.
There was not much content in the letter. It was only 3 short sentences, but the name on the letter was Ji Tianqing. After Ling Yunfei finished reading the letter, the sneer on her face deepened. Seeing the little prince's questioning gaze, she took the initiative to explain. "Ji Tianqing, that trash, asked me to meet him at the plum garden in the western suburbs tonight. He said that he has something to discuss with me. This guy went to the Taiyi mountain range and didn't die there. He even dares to ask me to meet him? He's really looking for death. Tonight, I will personally deal with him. Once and for all."
The little prince raised his eyebrows and reminded her.
"Fei, don't let your guard down. Ji Tianqing is not someone to be underestimated. How about I go with you?" Ling Yunfei smiled and shook her head, refusing. "He's just a trash who will never return to the true energy realm. What threat can he be? I can easily kill him. I'm about to get my revenge. Brothers, please save it and vote for me. Please, everyone." Chapter 49. The night was dark and the Ji residence was silent.
Everyone in the courtyards and houses had already gone to bed.
Only the guards were still patrolling the area. Ji Tianqing, who was dressed in black, quietly walked out of Qing Feng courtyard and left through the back door of the Ji residence. After half a day of closed-door cultivation, his sword embryo's power had increased by 40% and his power had improved. He sped towards the west gate under the night sky. His body was as light as a swallow and his speed was as fast as the wind. There was no curfew in the imperial city of Green Cloud. After Ji Tianqing passed through the west gate of the imperial city, he did not take the main road outside the city. Instead, he took a small path to the plum garden. The plum garden in the western suburbs covered an area of 1,000 square meters. It was the largest plum blossom viewing spot outside the imperial city. Every winter, the nobles in the imperial city would go to the plum garden to admire the plum blossoms. However, it was April now. There were only plum blossoms left in the garden. There was no scenery to admire. During the day, the plum garden was deserted and deserted. At night, the plum garden was even quieter. Even the wandering ghosts were not willing to enter. The reason why Ji Tianqing chose this place was, firstly, to avoid being noticed, and secondly, to test Ling Yunfei's strength. He knew that Ling Yunfei had always wanted to kill him. Therefore, he believed that Ling Yunfei would definitely attend the appointment after receiving the letter. After arriving at the plum garden, Ji Tianqing went straight to the peak of the mountain and entered a manor. This manor was called the Plum Manor. During the season when the plum blossoms were in full bloom, people who came to admire the plum blossoms would gather and rest here. However, the plum manor was completely dark now. Not even a shadow could be seen. Ji Tianqing and Ling Yunfei had agreed to meet in the plum manor. He looked around the manor and then leaped 20 feet into the air, landing on the roof of the main hall. This place was the highest. If it was daytime, he could see everything within a 10-mile radius. Even if it was a moonless night, Ji Tianqing could still observe the surroundings of the plum manor while hiding on the roof. If Ling Yunfei brought an expert with her, he would be able to detect it in advance and take precautions. Although the possibility of this was not high, he had to be cautious. Time passed by quietly. An hour passed by very quickly. 9 o'clock had arrived. Ji Tianqing crouched on the roof, his sharp eyes looking outside the plum manor's gate, waiting patiently. Sure enough, after a short while, light footsteps could be heard outside the door. A slim black figure quietly crossed the gate and entered the courtyard of the plum manor. This figure was dressed in black and wore a veil. However, Ji Tianqing was too familiar with this figure. He immediately recognized that she was Ling Yunfei. Ling Yunfei, who was dressed in black, held a sword tightly and looked around with sharp eyes. Seeing that there was no ambush in the plum plantation, she lowered her voice and said, "Ji Tianqing, I'm here, you can come out now." Ji Tianqing observed from above for a moment. Seeing that Ling Yunfei didn't bring any attendants or guards, and that there was no ambush around the plum manor, he showed himself to meet her. He jumped down from the roof and landed lightly in front of Ling Yunfei, about 20 feet away. He took off his mask and looked at Ling Yunfei with cold eyes. His mouth curled up into a sneer. "Ling Yunfei, you really kept your promise and came alone." Ling Yunfei also took off her veil and said sarcastically, "I was afraid that if I brought my guards, you would have run away in fear and wouldn't dare to show up. Besides, you're just a trash with a destroyed dantian. What's there to be afraid of?" Ji Tianqing frowned and a cold light flashed in his eyes. "Ling Yunfei, you're so confident and arrogant. Have you already refined the God-seizing pearl and got my blood and power?" Ling Yunfei's body shook and her expression changed slightly. She was secretly vigilant. This bastard. He asked me to meet here tonight just to ask about the God-seizing pearl? Has he found out something? The night was dark, and the change in her expression was hard to notice. She sneered calmly, "Haha, Ji Tianqing, do you still want to take back the God-seizing pearl?" "Of course not." Ji Tianqing shook his head and sneered, "I just want to see who you gave the God-seizing pearl to." As soon as he finished his words, he suddenly pounced on Ling Yunfei as fast as an arrow leaving the bow. While he was still in the air, he had already pulled out his blood dragon sword and slashed 3 blood-red sword lights at Ling Yunfei's head. Ling Yunfei didn't expect that Ji Tianqing would pull out his sword and attack her after saying 3 words. Where did his confidence and courage come from? Ling Yunfei immediately came back to her senses and pulled out her sword. She slashed a few cold lights at Ji Tianqing. Ding ding ding. The 2 swords collided 3 times in an instant, producing 3 crisp sounds, breaking the tranquility of the plum orchard. Ji Tianqing's blood dragon sword was bounced away and his body trembled as he took 3 steps back. Ling Yunfei's face was also pale and she took 4 steps back before stopping. Her sore and numb shoulders and the cracked web between her thumb and forefinger made her realize an unbelievable problem. You've recovered to the true energy realm. Ling Yunfei's eyes widened and revealed an unbelievable expression. She couldn't help but exclaim. So what if I am? Ji Tianqing sneered mockingly. You haven't improved at all. How disappointing. Then he swung his sword at Ling Yunfei again and attacked her fiercely with the 10 mysterious swordplay. In an instant, more than 10 dazzling sword lights flashed and cut through the dark night, enveloping Ling Yunfei. The biting cold energy and cold light rushed at Ling Yunfei, causing her to feel more pressure. She could only retreat. At this moment, she even had an illusion in her heart. She seemed to have seen Ji Tianqing from half a month ago, the #1 genius of the Imperial City who was at the 7th level of the true energy realm. Ding ding dang dang, sounds of metal colliding rang out again. Ling Yunfei was forced back 8 steps, but the sword still left a wound on her right arm. Blood gushed out from the finger-long wound and soaked her clothes, but she didn't have time to care. Ji Tianqing's expression was cold. He didn't say a word and attacked with all his strength. Another 9 dazzling sword lights splashed out. Ding 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 ding. Ling Yunfei gritted her teeth and blocked the 7th sword, but she couldn't block the 8th sword. Clang! The sword in her hand was knocked out of her hand, and fell outside the courtyard wall. When the 9th sword light came, she had no power to resist. Swoosh! The sword light instantly pierced her lower abdomen and penetrated her dantian. The extremely sharp blood dragon sword and sword qi directly destroyed her dantian. The true energy that she had painstakingly cultivated for several years instantly collapsed and dissipated. Not only did Ling Yunfei lose to Ji Tianqing's sword, her dantian was destroyed on the spot and her cultivation was crippled. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, blood for blood. Ji Tianqing withdrew his blood dragon sword and stood with the sword in his hand, staring coldly at Ling Yunfei. Ling Yunfei retreated to the corner of the courtyard with a pale face. She bent over in pain and blood flowed out from the corner of her mouth. She leaned against the courtyard wall and covered her blood-stained abdomen with both hands. She stared at Ji Tianqing with eyes full of fear. Impossible. This is impossible. You actually destroyed my dantian and crippled my cultivation. Oh! Ling Yunfei screamed crazily, her face filled with fear and despair. Before coming to the plum garden, she was full of confidence. She thought that she could kill Ji Tianqing tonight and get rid of all future troubles. However, she never thought that Ji Tianqing's strength would actually recover in such a strange manner. In the end, she was defeated by Ji Tianqing's sword. Her cultivation foundation was crippled and she became a cripple from then on. She couldn't believe or accept such a shocking turn of events. Chapter 50. Fear, despair, and unwillingness filled Ling Yunfei's heart and soul. She sat weakly in the corner of the courtyard with her back against the brick wall. Her face was covered in blood and tears. Ji Tianqing stood in front of her with his sword in hand. Looking at her miserable appearance, he didn't feel the slightest bit of pity. In his heart, there was only relief, only joy. Ling Yunfei had treated him like this at the peak of Heaven Pavilion Mountain. She dug out the God-seizing pearl, destroyed his dantian, and even carried him to the Sky Pillar Sex entrance exam while he was unconscious. She had turned him into a trash that everyone ridiculed. After that, she arrogantly came to break off the engagement and spread the news. How vicious was Ling Yunfei's method? It was so vicious that it made one's hair stand on end. Ji Tianqing had only crippled her. That was already very merciful. He said indifferently, Ling Yunfei, you haven't improved at all. You're still at the 5th level of the true energy realm. You didn't refine the God-seizing pearl. Speak. Who did you give the God-seizing pearl to? Who ordered you to murder me? Ling Yunfei raised her head to look at him. Her blood-stained face suddenly revealed a disdainful sneer. Hee. So what if you've recovered your strength? You're still not on the same level as him. You're just the young master of a rich man in the countryside. And he has great ambitions. One day, he will become a true dragon that soars in the 9 heavens. Ji Tianqing's face darkened. His eyes flashed with murderous intent. Swoosh. He waved the blood dragon sword and pointed it at Ling Yunfei's heart. Who is he? Speak. Otherwise you'll die. The sneer on Ling Yunfei's face froze. Fear flashed through her eyes. She stubbornly raised her head and screamed angrily, Ji Tianxing. You want to kill me? You beast with a human face. Did you forget? Back then, you said that you loved me with no regrets and that you would protect me for the rest of your life. You are such a hypocritical and despicable hypocrite. Ji Tianxing's expression was still cold, his face full of disdain as he shouted, the person who said he loves you and wants to protect you is the Ji Tianxing that you used in the past. Not the current me. I treated you like a family member and took good care of you, but you destroyed my martial arts foundation and reputation. For a vicious woman like you, it would be too easy for me to kill you with my sword. Seeing his murderous aura, Ling Yunfei panicked. Her eyes were filled with fear. After a short silence, she suddenly made up her mind and looked up at Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing, even if you kill me, I will never tell you. Furthermore, even if I die, he will definitely avenge me. Ji Tianxing frowned and shouted coldly, if that's the case, then go to hell. Just as he held the blood dragon sword tightly and was about to pierce Ling Yunfei's heart, he suddenly heard a sharp sound. Whoosh, whoosh. Two cold lights pierced through the night and shot towards the back of his head and neck like arrows. Hidden weapons. Ji Tianxing's heart skipped a beat. He subconsciously dodged to the side and leaped 20 feet away. The two concealed weapons immediately missed and hit the green brick wall of the courtyard, producing two crisp ding-ding sounds and sparks. At the same time, a figure jumped out from the darkness and rushed to Ling Yunfei's side. This figure carried Ling Yunfei, who was curled up in the corner, and jumped over the wall in a flash and went into the plum garden. Ji Tianxing hurriedly jumped over the courtyard wall as well. After landing on the ground, he looked around with a sharp gaze. However, that figure had already disappeared into the night. No one knew where it went. Ji Tianxing could tell that the figure was quite powerful. He must be an expert at LV7 True Element Realm or above. He did not chase after him. Even if he did, it would be useless. He could not catch up with him. He frowned and thought for a moment. Then, he sneered and turned to leave the plum garden. He walked down the mountain. Although that figure was dressed in black and had a veil covering his face, he was still able to see through it. Ji Tianxing could tell from the figure's body shape that it must be a young man who was tall and thin. Thinking of this, he vaguely had an answer in his heart. A black horse carriage was speeding on the official road in the western suburbs, heading straight for the west gate of the imperial city. In the dark carriage, Ling Yunfei was leaning against the corner. Her hands were covering her bleeding abdomen. Her face was pale and weak. There was another person sitting beside Ling Yunfei in the carriage. He was thinking silently about something. This person was a young man with a feminine temperament. He was wearing a black robe and took off his mask, revealing a handsome and fair face. Ling Yunfei was on the verge of fainting due to her serious injuries. She murmured weakly, "Little prince, I'm so cold. Can you hug me, please?" The little prince was indifferent. His face was as cold as ice as he was still thinking. Ling Yunfei was silent for a moment. Then she said intermittently, "Little prince, Ji Tianxing, he has already recovered to True Element Realm. He's starting to suspect you and me. You have to be careful." Only then did the little prince gather his thoughts and a disdainful sneer appeared on his lips. "Humph. So what if he recovers to True Element Realm? He's still not this prince's match. Fei, your dantian has been destroyed. Your martial arts foundation has been destroyed. You have no value to this prince anymore." Ling Yunfei's expression froze. Her face was full of astonishment. What? Little prince? You? The little prince looked at her with a smile, but his eyes were as cold as ice. Fei, you once said that you loved this prince more than yourself. You were willing to give up everything for this prince. Now, it's time for you to fulfill your promise. As he said that, he suddenly grabbed his sword and stabbed it into Ling Yunfei's heart. Ling Yunfei's eyes widened. Her face was full of fear and disbelief. She never would have thought that the little prince who had been so gentle and sweet to her would personally stab a sword into her heart. She glared at the little prince with a heart full of unwillingness. Blood kept flowing out of her mouth as she weakly asked, "Why?" The little prince still had a smile on his face. He reached out to touch her face. His movements were as gentle as always and filled with tenderness. "This will be the last thing you'll do for this prince before you die.
This prince will send your body back to the Ling family and tell your father that it was Ji Tianqing who killed you. Don't worry, your father will do anything to avenge you. Ling Yunfei's eyes widened even more. Endless anger and resentment poured out of her eyes, as well as deep regret.
Jiling, you, so despicable. It was just a few short words, but it used up the last of her strength.
Large amounts of dark red blood flowed out of her mouth, dyeing her clothes red.
The life in her eyes disappeared.
Her breathing had already stopped, but her eyes were still wide open.
She was unwilling to die in peace. Today, there are still 4 chapters. Please add this book to your bookshelf and give me 2 recommendation votes. Thank you. Chapter 51.
In the middle of the night, the Ling family should have been sleeping soundly under the curtain of night.
However, at this moment, the main hall of the Ling residence was brightly lit.
There were many people walking back and forth, making sad and angry sounds from time to time. In the middle of the brightly lit main hall, there was a bamboo mat and a brocade bedding on the floor. On the blood-stained bedding, there was a young girl in black. Her face was pale and her eyes were wide open.
This corpse was Ling Yunfei, who had died long ago. A few Ling family elders were surrounding the corpse. They were discussing and cursing in a low voice. A graceful and elegant middle-aged woman knelt beside the corpse, wailing in grief. The head of the family, Ling Sihai, stood in the middle of the hall and looked at Ling Yunfei's corpse with a pale face. He was so angry that his whole body was trembling. Everyone could see that his heart was filled with anger and killing intent. His eyes had turned blood red. Just a few minutes ago, a carriage drove into the Ling residence and brought Ling Yunfei's corpse to him. The owner of the carriage, the little prince, told him personally that Ling Yunfei was going to meet Ji Tianqing at the plum garden in the western suburbs. When he heard the news and rushed to the plum garden to save her, he only saw Ling Yunfei's corpse lying in a pool of blood. After that, the little prince took out Ji Tianqing's invitation letter and gave it to Ling Sihai. Then, he left quietly. Ling Sihai could no longer hold back his anger and killing intent.
He looked at the night outside the main door coldly and roared in a low voice, "Ji family!
Ji Tianqing! No matter what, I will definitely kill you and cut you into pieces to pay for my daughter's life." The roar filled with killing intent reverberated in the main hall of the Ling residence. All the elders of the Ling family were also in a heavy mood. They cursed and swore to bury Ji Tianqing with Ling Yunfei. After Ji Tianqing returned to the Ji residence, he quietly returned to Qingfeng courtyard. He changed out of his black clothes and sat at the table in front of the window, deep in thought. He had already achieved his goal in the plum garden tonight. Things were just as he had guessed. Ling Yunfei didn't refine the God-seizing bead, but gave it to someone else. The person who got the God-seizing pearl was probably the man in black who saved Ling Yunfei in the plum village. He recalled the figure of the little prince, Ji Ling, and compared it with the black-clothed man. After a short moment, he had an answer in his heart, and a cold smile appeared on the corners of his mouth. A useless prince with a damaged dantian secretly colluded with Ling Yunfei and used the God-seizing pearl to steal my bloodline and power. After it's done, I'll use the red starflower as an excuse to release the news at the right time. This way, I can conceal the fact that he has repaired his dantian.
Luoyan King Ji Ling, is it really you? If he had not discovered the clues and grasped the various clues, he would never have thought that this matter would involve the king of Luoyan. Although he did not have any concrete evidence to prove that the person who had obtained the God-seizing pearl was the king of Luoyan, he was confident that the king of Luoyan would be able to obtain the God-seizing pearl. However, based on the clues he currently had, he was 80% sure that the king of Luoyan was the real mastermind. The Ling family alone was already very difficult to deal with. If the king of Luoyan, who controlled the 2 prefectures and was even more powerful, Ji Tianqing only felt the pressure increase explosively. His heart felt heavy, as if a huge rock was pressing down on it. Tonight, I crippled Ling Yunfei, and the investigation led to the king of Luoyan. He will definitely do something. Next, my situation will be even more dangerous. If I'm not careful, I'll be doomed eternally. The thick sense of danger made his thirst for power even more urgent. He didn't dare to waste any time. He was determined to increase his power as much as possible before the crisis arrived. Thus, after he calmed down, he entered the secret room to cultivate. These 2 days of hard work had increased his power by 70%.
Soon, he would be able to advance to true energy realm level 3. The fourth courtyard of the Ji mansion was the residence of the second elder, Ji Ruffing. In a dark secret room hidden underground, two people were whispering to each other. The burly Ji Ruffing, who wore a purple brocade robe, was sitting on a wooden armchair, deep in thought. In front of him stood a tall young man in luxurious clothes. It was Ji Hao. Ji Ruffing spoke with a serious expression. However, the matter of Tai Town has been exposed. Ji Chongkong is already investigating the accounts of the workshop in the eastern suburbs. He also secretly ordered people from the Shadow Sword Hall to investigate me. You have to be more careful in the near future. Don't give yourself away. Father, I understand. Ji Hao nodded. He took out a thumb-sized scroll from his sleeve and reported in a low voice. Father, I just received a pigeon message. The Ling family's Ling Yunfei is dead. Ji Ruffing raised his eyebrows. A trace of surprise flashed through his eyes. Ling Yunfei is dead? Who killed her? Ji Hao hurriedly answered truthfully. According to the Ling family, it was Ji Tianqing who killed her. Tonight, Ji Tianqing killed her in the plum garden in the western suburbs. Ji Ruffing frowned and said with a serious expression, I didn't expect that bastard Ji Tianqing to recover his power. This is unbelievable. He pondered for a moment and suddenly revealed a cold smile. Ling Yunfei was killed. With such a big thing happening, the Ling family definitely won't swallow this. There will definitely be a good show tomorrow. Ji Hao also nodded in agreement. He sneered, I think Ling Sihai will definitely bring a large group of experts to the Ji mansion and force Ji Tianqing to hand over Ji Tianqing, right? Ji Ruffing's eyes flashed. He said in a low voice, This is an excellent opportunity. It seems that I have to make a trip to the Ling family immediately. Ji Hao was stunned. He asked in confusion, Father, why are you going to the Ling family at this time? Ling Yunfei just died. The Ling family must hate our Ji family to the bone. Although this matter has nothing to do with us, if you go to the Ling family at this time, it's hard to guarantee that they won't vent their anger on you. Ji Ruffing looked at him with a smile and said meaningfully, you're still too young. You still don't understand the logic behind this. The Ling family wants Ji Tianqing to pay with his life. Ji Tianqing will definitely risk his life to protect Ji Tianqing. However, if Ji Tianqing dies, Ji Tianqing will lose his backing and will be at the mercy of the Ling family. The Ling family's target is Ji Tianqing, and our target is Ji Chongkong. If I want to join forces with the Ling family to kill Ji Chongkong, do you think the Ling family will refuse my cooperation? Ji Hao suddenly understood and revealed a smug sneer. Haha, of course the Ling family won't refuse. In fact, it's exactly what they want. Father, this move of yours is really too brilliant. This is the perfect opportunity to kill two birds with one stone. If this plan succeeds, Ji Tianqing and his son will die tomorrow and the Ji family will completely fall into our hands. Ji Ruffing nodded slightly and revealed a smug smile. He said earnestly, in the future, you must learn more and think more when you encounter problems. This way you can obtain the greatest benefits with the smallest price. Ji Hao nodded with deep admiration and hurriedly cupped his hands. Father, this child will remember your teachings. And it's good that you remember. Ji Ruffing nodded and turned to the door of the secret room. You stay here and wait for news. Father will go to the Ling family to find Ling Sihai. Brothers, I've added 2 chapters today. There's a total of 5 chapters. Please recommend, bookmark, tip, and give me a 5-star rating. Little he is begging everyone. Thank you very much. Chapter 52. When the sun rose, Ji Tianqing ended his cultivation and walked out of the secret room. After a night of cultivation, his strength had increased by 30%, and the power of his sword embryo had become even stronger. He washed up and started eating breakfast. At this moment, a young guard quickly walked into Qing Feng courtyard and said respectfully, First young master, master has sent word for you to go to the study. Ji Tianqing put down his bowl and chopsticks. He raised his eyebrows and thought to himself, Father is looking for me? Could it be that there's a result? He quickly walked out of the room and hurried to his father's study. When he saw his father, Ji Chongkong was busy in the study. His expression was serious and focused. When he saw Ji Tianqing, Ji Chongkong put down the account books in his hands and rubbed his forehead tiredly. Tianqing, come here quickly. Father has something to tell you.
Ji Chongkong waved at him with a serious expression.
Ji Tianqing quickly walked to his father's side.
He glanced at the account books on the table and knew what was going on.
Father, is there any progress on the eastern outskirts workshop?
Yes.
Ji Chongkong nodded with a gloomy expression. He lowered his voice and said, I've already checked the eastern outskirts workshop's accounts. There's no record of the goods Su Zifeng traded in Tai Town. There's also no agreement between the workshop owner and Ji Ruffing. Ji Tianqing had expected this and was not surprised.
He asked, Father, have you investigated second uncle?
Was he the one who ordered this? Ji Chongkong raised his eyebrows and a cold glint flashed through his eyes. I'm having Shadow Sword Hall secretly investigate him. I can't confront him face to face for the time being. It's not time yet.
However, I'm 80% sure that he was the one who ordered this. In the past 10 years, his ambition has grown bigger and bigger. He's been doing a lot of things in secret and is becoming more and more daring.
Ji Tianqing asked again, Father, have you found out who the person who traded with Su Zifeng is? The leader is a middle-aged man. He has the face of a horse and his features are very distinct. Ji Chongkong fell silent when this question was brought up. He seemed to be hesitating whether he should tell Ji Tianqing the results.
After considering for a while, he lowered his voice and said the result.
Tianqing, the Shadow Sword Hall has found out that the person who made the deal with Su Zifeng is one of the customers of the Spirit Fire Palace. A diner from the Spirit Flame Palace. Ji Tianqing's pupils shrank as shock flashed through his eyes. Is it an expert that the little prince has recruited?
Diners were like hangers-on. They were capable people who were taken in by the rich and powerful.
They worked hard for their masters.
The little prince, Ji Ling, was a worldly person and was courteous to the wise, so he had won over many experts and talents to work for him.
Ji Tianqing would never have thought that the person who secretly made a deal with Su Zifeng and bought the Ji family's profound weapon-treasured sword was actually him. He frowned and doubtfully asked Ji Chongkong, Father, the young prince has purchased many mystic weapons and treasured swords from our Ji family these past few years. Logically speaking, the officials and generals of the Luo and Yan prefectures should be fully equipped. Even if he wanted to replenish the weapons for the generals, he could go through the official accounts. Why would he need to make a deal in secret? Ji Chongkong shook his head and said with a grave expression, The official transactions are still the same as before. They are all checked by the imperial family. There are no problems.
However, the young prince did not buy the mystic weapons and treasured swords for the generals of the Luo and Yan prefectures.
They are for his own personal use. Tianqing, there is something that I haven't told you. 3 years ago, the young prince came to me in secret. He wanted to buy a large number of mystic weapons from the Ji family at a low price. His purpose was unknown. This matter is of great importance. If the imperial family found out, he would be accused of treason. Thus, I firmly refused.
I thought that he had given up on this idea.
I didn't expect that he would secretly collude with Ji Ruffing and make a deal in secret. It seems that this person's ambition is not small.
I'm afraid he has other plans.
Ji Tianqing was even more shocked.
After a moment of contemplation, he nodded and said, So that's how it is.
The young prince, Ji Ling, appears to be virtuous, but I didn't expect him to be so shrewd.
Father, this matter must be thoroughly investigated.
Otherwise, when the matter is exposed, I'm afraid that the Ji family will also be implicated and cause a great disaster. Ji Chongkong nodded in agreement and said, I understand. I have ordered the sword envoys of the Shadow Sword Hall to investigate this matter. We must get to the bottom of this. Ji Tianqing trusted his father and the Shadow Sword Hall very much. He nodded and did not say anything else. At this time, a middle-aged guard suddenly rushed to the study and anxiously reported, Master, something bad has happened. The Ling family head, Ling Sihai, brought many experts and blocked the entrance of our Ji mansion. Ji Chongkong and Ji Tianqing's expressions changed at the same time. They looked at each other and saw the doubt in each other's eyes. Ji Tianqing frowned and thought to himself, Could it be that I crippled Ling Yunfei and Ling Sihai came to the mansion to seek revenge in a fit of rage? But that shouldn't be the case. No matter how angry Ling Sihai is, he wouldn't kill his way to the Ji family because of this, right? Ji Chongkong also frowned and asked the guard in a deep voice, What's going on? What does the Ling family want to do? Start a war with the Ji family?
The middle-aged guard quickly cupped his hands and answered, Master, Ling Sihai said that you must hand over the eldest young master today. He wants the eldest young master to pay with his life for Ling Yunfei.
Master, quickly go and take a look.
Ling Sihai brought 8 experts and said that if you don't show up, he will bring people to kill his way into the mansion.
Hearing this, Ji Tianqing and Ji Changkong's expressions changed at the same time.
They cried out in alarm. Ling Yunfei is dead?
She's dead? Ji Tianqing frowned fiercely.
His face became as cold as ice and his eyes flashed with deep doubt. He thought to himself, impossible.
Last night, I only crippled Ling Yunfei's cultivation and she was rescued. With her injuries at that time, she shouldn't have lost her life. Moreover, Ling Yunfei carried healing pills with her and the Ling family is an elixir family. She can't have died. Someone must have killed her and deliberately pushed the blame to me. Of course, Ji Changkong knew that there was something fishy about this matter. He saw Ji Tianqing's strange expression and asked, Tianqing, do you know what happened? Ji Tianqing didn't hide it and said truthfully, Father, last night, I met Ling Yunfei at the plum garden in the western suburbs and fought with her. I destroyed her dantian and crippled her cultivation. However, just as I was about to kill her, she was rescued by a black-clothed man. With her injuries at that time, she shouldn't have died.
Ji Changkong's eyes flashed with a trace of joy.
That's great. Tianqing, I didn't expect your strength to recover so quickly.
That Ling Yunfei is at the 5th level of the true energy realm, but you defeated her and crippled her dantian.
Humph. Previously, she was the one who caused your cultivation to be crippled and even caused you to suffer great humiliation. Don't talk about crippling her dantian. Even if you killed her with a sword, she deserved it.
Ji Tianqing remained silent, but he muttered in his heart, Father is really protective of me. Ling Sihai has already brought people to kill at the mansion, but Father is still happy about my recovery.
Chapter 53.
A moment later, Ji Changkong and Ji Tianqing retrieved their profound weapons and rushed to the entrance of the Ji mansion. When they arrived at the first courtyard, they saw that Ling Sihai and the others were already standing in the spacious courtyard. At the entrance of the Ji mansion, the corpses of several guards lay on the ground in pools of blood.
They had already stopped breathing.
Ling Sihai, dressed in a black robe, stood in the middle of the courtyard with a cold and stern expression. His entire body was filled with anger and murderous intent. Behind him were 8 middle-aged men with swords and sabers. They were all martial arts experts above the 7th level of the true element realm. They also had a murderous aura. More than 10 guards of the Ji mansion had already gathered around the courtyard. They were all holding swords and sabers as they stared at Ling Sihai and the others. Without anyone giving the order, these guards did not dare to act rashly. The second elder of the Ji family, Ji Rufeng, and several leaders of the Ji family, as well as some of the Ji family disciples, were standing at the entrance of the meeting hall. Ji Rufeng pretended to be angry as he spoke loudly. He constantly tried to persuade Ling Sihai to calm down so that he could resolve this matter peacefully. However, he was only talking. He did not take out any weapons nor did he order the guards to attack. The leaders and young disciples of the Ji family all followed his lead. They did not have the slightest bit of the Ji family's courage. When the crowd saw that Ji Changkong and Ji Tianqing had arrived, they showed an expectant expression. Their gazes gathered on the two of them. Ji Changkong glanced at the corpses at the entrance and coldly glanced at Ji Rufeng and the others. He held his sword and walked into the courtyard. He looked at Ling Sihai with a sharp gaze and shouted with a murderous aura. Ling Sihai, you dare to bring people into the Ji mansion? Do you think that there is no one in the Ji family? Then, his gaze swept across the 8 experts behind Ling Sihai. He angrily shouted again, who was it that killed my Ji family guards? I, Ji Changkong, will make him pay with his life. As Ji Changkong's voice fell, his entire body emitted an invisible and powerful murderous aura that swept towards Ling Sihai and the others. Ling Sihai stood straight like a sharp sword in the courtyard. He was not intimidated by Ji Changkong's killing intent at all. He glared fiercely at Ji Tianqing, his eyes bloodshot with rage. He growled in a deep voice, Ji Tianqing, you killed my son, Yun Fei. I will tear you into pieces to comfort Yun Fei's soul in heaven. As he spoke, he could no longer restrain his murderous aura and suddenly drew his sword. Swish! Swish! Ling Sihai, who was at the 4th level of the Tongxian realm, brandished his sword with all his strength, and actually slashed out 3 dark green sword rays, shooting towards Ji Tianqing, who was 50 feet away. Each sword ray was over 2 feet long and 3 fingers wide, containing a powerful and violent force. Ji Tianqing was sizing up Ling Sihai and the 8 experts behind him. He was not prepared for Ling Sihai to attack as soon as they met. Seeing the 3 sword lights slashing at him at high speed, his expression changed, and he subconsciously wanted to retreat. At this moment, Ji Chongkong's figure flashed and rushed 3 feet away, blocking in front of him. Clang! Ji Chongkong instantly unsheathed his treasured sword and unleashed a dazzling cold light that slashed towards the 3 sword beams. Bang! 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 In a series of muffled sounds, the 3 sword lights that Ling Sihai sent out were all shattered. The sharp and violent sword chi also forced Ling Sihai to take 2 steps back, his face ashen. Ji Chongkong pointed his sword at the ground and stood proudly in the middle of the field. He shouted, "Ling Sihai, if you want to kill my son, Tianqing, I will chop off your head first." Ji Chongkong. Ling Sihai roared with rage and glared at him. He shouted, "Yesterday, Ji Tianqing sent a letter to my daughter, Yun Fei, and asked her to meet him at the plum garden in the western suburbs tonight. Last night, my daughter, Yun Fei, was killed by him in the plum garden. A life for a life. A debt must be repaid. This is the law of heaven and earth. Ji Chongkong, if you don't hand over Ji Tianqing today, don't blame me for starting a massacre." Ji Chongkong immediately sneered and said, "Hee, Ling Sihai, you keep saying that my son, Tianqing, killed Ling Yunfei. Where is your evidence? If you don't have evidence, then you are slandering me. You want evidence, right?" Ling Sihai also sneered in response. He took out a letter from his sleeve and threw it at Ji Chongkong. "This is the letter that Ji Tianqing wrote to Yun Fei. This is the evidence." A cold light flashed in Ji Chongkong's eyes as he reached out to receive the letter without changing his expression. He opened the letter and took a few glances before throwing it on the ground. He sneered and said, "Hee, what can a letter mean? Can this letter mean that my son, Tianqing, killed Ling Yunfei with his own hands? Ling Sihai, we were good friends and almost became in-laws. However, your daughter, Ling Yunfei, despicably and shamelessly murdered Tianqing, causing his cultivation to be crippled and even being ridiculed by the world. Not to mention that Tianqing didn't kill your daughter. Even if he really did kill Ling Yunfei, your daughter deserved it." Ling Sihai was so angry that he laughed and his face darkened. All the muscles and bones in his body were stretched to the limit, making cracking sounds. It was obvious that he had pushed his strength to the limit. "Ji Chongkong, since you are determined to protect Ji Tianqing, then don't blame me for being ruthless. All of you attack. Kill Ji Chongkong first, then kill Ji Tianqing to avenge Yunfei." The furious Ling Sihai waved his hand and gave the order to surround and kill Ji Chongkong on the spot. 8 murderous martial Dao experts had been secretly accumulating their strength and were ready to attack. At this moment, after receiving Ling Sihai's order, they immediately pounced on Ji Chongkong with ferocious faces and brandished their swords and sabers to surround him. Ling Sihai also roared angrily and pounced on Ji Chongkong fiercely, waving his sword and splashing out sword light. 9 martial Dao experts surrounded Ji Chongkong, and each of them used their ultimate skills to attack him. However, Ji Chongkong was fearless as he faced Ling Sihai and the other 8 experts with his sword alone, showing the demeanor of an expert. He used the Ji family's 10 profound swordplay and displayed an extremely profound attainment in the way of the sword. Wherever the sword light went, it forced everyone to retreat. With his strength at the 6th level of the profound comprehension realm, it was enough to look down on everyone present and look down on Ling Sihai and the other 8 martial Dao experts. After all, Ling Sihai was only at the 4th level of the profound comprehension realm. Among the 8 martial Dao experts, 3 were at the 8th and 9th level of the profound comprehension realm, and only 5 were at the 1st to 3rd level of the profound comprehension realm. Even though Ling Sihai and the others had the advantage of numbers, they could not do anything to Ji Chongkong. Instead, they were forced into a fluster and were in an extremely sorry state. In an instant, saber light and sword shadows appeared in the courtyard, radiating cold light in all directions. The violent and devastating sword chi swept through the space within a radius of 20 feet, carving gullies in the limestone floor. Ding ding dang dang. The sound of saber and sword colliding could be heard incessantly. The incomparably intense battle dazzled everyone from the Ji family, and they all held their breaths. In just a few breaths,
The two sides had exchanged more than 10 moves. At this moment, Ji Chongkong forced the surrounding experts back with his sword. He jumped out of the crowd and retreated 10 feet away. The battle stopped temporarily. Ji Chongkong was unharmed and his breathing was still steady, but his face was slightly pale. On the other hand, Ling Sihai and the others were in a sorry state. All of them were injured. The two profound comprehension realm experts were the most miserable. Their chests, back, and shoulders had been stabbed. Their clothes were dyed red with blood and their hair was disheveled. The other profound comprehension realm experts also had 1 or 2 sword wounds on their bodies, but none of them were fatal. Even Ling Sihai, who was the strongest, had a sword wound on his chest. In the bloody wound, one could even see a section of white bone. Seeing this scene, everyone in the Ji family had an incredulous expression and exclaimed in surprise. Only Ji Ruffing and Ji Hao's faces were gloomy. Their eyes flickered with contemplation. No one knew what they were thinking. Chapter 54. Ji Chongkong stood proudly on the spot and glared at Ling Sihai. Ling Sihai, how dare you and these 8 pieces of trash come to my Ji mansion? I'll give you one last chance. If you retreat now, I can spare your lives. Otherwise, all of you will be buried here. Hearing Ji Chongkong's words, the 8 experts of the Ling clan secretly exchanged glances. Ling Sihai also remained silent. Ji Ruffing suddenly thought of something and his lips curled into a sneer. Ji Tianxing had been worried about his father's safety. He had been paying close attention to the battle, and his heart was clenched. Hearing his father's words, he was shocked and thought of something. That's right. Although father is at the 6th level of the profound comprehension realm, he has hidden injuries. Recently, his injuries have been acting up frequently, so he can't fight at all. Just now, he forcefully used his true origin. I'm afraid that his injuries have already acted up. He won't be able to hold on for long. Thinking of this, Ji Tianxing's heart was burning with worry. After a moment of silence, Ling Sihai suddenly raised his head and sneered, Ji Chongkong, even though you're strong enough, you suffered an internal injury from the battle with the sword sect on the ultimate sword peak all those years ago, and you still haven't recovered, right? Now that things have come to this, if you still have your strength, how could you let us go? Right now, you're just strong on the outside but weak on the inside. Ji Chongkong's expression suddenly changed. He was shocked. Only a few people in the mansion know about my injuries. Who leaked the news? However, before he could think about it, Ling Sihai swung his sword and slashed several sword rays at him. The 8 experts also followed closely behind and began to besiege him. Ji Chongkong had no choice but to block with his sword and fight with the 9 experts again. Ding ding dang dang. The sound of swords colliding rang out again. The hearts of everyone in the courtyard tightened once again as they stared intently at the scene of the battle. After 10 breaths, 2 true origin realm experts were heavily injured. They screamed miserably as they retreated from the battle. One of them had an arm chopped off by Ji Chongkong, while the other had a leg chopped off. With such heavy injuries, he was naturally unable to continue fighting. While the 2 of them screamed and retreated, a cold killing intent flashed through Ji Tianxing's eyes. He held the blood dragon sword and charged forward. Swish! Swish! He waved his blood dragon sword and slashed out a few sharp sword lights, killing the 2 experts in the blink of an eye. One of them had his neck cut off by the blood dragon sword while the other had his heart pierced. The battle continued. Ji Chongkong was besieged by 7 experts. His complexion grew paler and paler, and his body was drenched in sweat. However, in just a short moment, another true energy realm expert and a level 1 Tongxian realm expert retreated with heavy injuries. There were only 5 experts left attacking Ji Chongkong. One of them was Ling Sihai, while the other 4 were at the 2nd or 3rd stage of the Tongxian realm. Not long after, Ji Chongkong was also stabbed a few times. His clothes were dyed red with blood. The injuries of Ling Sihai and the others were even worse. Each of them had been stabbed several times, and their bodies were stained with blood. Suddenly, Ling Sihai and the other 2 Tongxian realm experts took out a palm-sized paper bag from their sleeves. After the 3 of them crushed the paper bag, they waved their hands and sprinkled a light green powder at Ji Chongkong. Ji Chongkong mistook it for a hidden weapon. He immediately lifted the hem of his robe and danced with a gust of wind, blowing the powder away. However, after the powder was scattered around, It emitted a strong fragrance. Ji Changkong's expression changed drastically. His pale face turned as red as blood, and his body trembled uncontrollably. Cough, cough. He covered his chest with his left hand and coughed violently. Dark red blood flowed out of his mouth. Ling Sihai and the other 4 Tongxian realm experts took this opportunity to charge forward with their swords. Damn it! It's actually powder. Ling Sihai actually used poison. How despicable! Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing immediately guessed that the powder was poisonous.
Seeing his father stumbling while resisting the attacks of Ling Sihai and the others, and the situation becoming more and more dangerous, he was so angry that his eyes almost popped out.
Unfortunately, his strength was too low and he did not have the qualifications to intervene in a fight between Tongxian realm experts. He could only worry helplessly. He suddenly remembered that Ji Ruffing and the other Ji family leaders were still standing under the eaves behind him. He hurriedly shouted to the crowd. "What are you waiting for? Quickly go and help the family head. The Ling family people are already at our door. Do you still want to watch the show?" However, Ji Ruffing, Ji Hao, Ji Ruffing, and the 3 leaders remained unmoved. More than a dozen Ji family disciples were eager to give it a try. They wanted to join the battle, but they all peeked at Ji Ruffing's reaction and restrained their impulses. Ji Tianqing immediately understood that this group of people were second uncle Ji Ruffing's supporters. He never would have thought that Ji Ruffing would actually dare to brazenly leave him in the lurch at this critical juncture. Suddenly, he noticed a problem and was stunned. No. The powder that Ling Sihai and the others sprinkled was not poisonous. Everyone in the courtyard smelled the strange fragrance of the powder, but only my father was poisoned. We are all fine. Could it be that my father's body was poisoned long ago, and the powder was the catalyst that triggered the poison in my father's body? Ji Tianqing was extremely intelligent, and he had been in love with Ling Yunfei for 3 years. He knew the Ling family's way of elixirs very well. Therefore, after a little analysis, he guessed the cause of his father's poisoning. At this time, Ji Changkong suddenly shouted and swung his sword to cut off the right arm of a Tongxian realm expert. However, he was also stabbed in the left abdomen by Ling Sihai's sword. He immediately let out a muffled groan and staggered back. At this time, he was covered in cuts and bruises and dripping with blood. He was extremely miserable, and his cultivation power was rapidly dissipating. Ji Tianqing's anger rushed to his head. He swung the blood dragon's sword and rushed to the field, shouting angrily. "Guards! All of you attack!" More than 10 guards hesitated for a moment before swinging their swords and rushed to the courtyard, attacking Ling Sihai and the others from all sides. Although these guards were only at true energy realm level 4 or 5, they were no match for Tongxian realm experts. However, they had the advantage in numbers, and Ling Sihai and the other Tongxian realm experts were all seriously injured. For a moment, the 2 sides were locked in a fierce battle. Ji Tianqing's eyes were bloodshot with anger. He swung the blood dragon sword crazily and attacked a true energy realm level 9 expert. This person's arm had been cut off by Ji Changkong, and his chest and back had been stabbed a few times. He was at the end of his rope. Ji Tianqing performed the 10 mysterious swordplay with all his strength, sending out more than 10 sword lights, forcing this person to retreat. In the end, this true energy realm expert retreated to the corner of the courtyard, having nowhere to hide. Ji Tianqing used all his strength to knock his sword away, and in an instant, he stabbed twice, piercing his forehead and throat. However, just as he killed this person, a Tongxian realm expert covered in blood suddenly rushed out from behind him and stabbed at him with his sword. Chapter 55. Ji Tianqing, you're courting death. Ha! The Tongxian realm expert, who was covered in blood, unleashed a powerful true yuan. He condensed a 3-foot sword ray on his sword and slashed at Ji Tianqing. Although he was heavily injured and had one of his arms chopped off by Ji Changkong, he was still a Tongxian realm expert. However, he was a LV1 Tongxian realm expert after all. His true yuan was so powerful that he could shatter stones with a single move. When he slashed out, the crimson sword ray was dazzling and emitted a scorching heat wave. Before the sword ray hit Ji Tianqing, he felt as if he was in a furnace and his hair was about to be burnt. At this critical moment, he recklessly unleashed all his strength and slashed out a dazzling sword ray to block the crimson sword ray. Bang! With a muffled sound, the sword light he slashed out was shattered, and the blood dragon sword was also cut in half with a clang.
The sword blade that was broken in two flew out and inserted into the blue brick courtyard wall with a shiob sound. Ji Tianxing was shocked and his eyes were filled with shock. Is this the true strength of a Tongxian realm expert? Although his blood dragon sword was a black class high-grade treasure sword, the Tongxian realm expert's treasure sword was only a black class medium-grade treasure sword. However, the opponent's cultivation was extremely profound and terrifying. That was why he could cut his blood dragon sword in half. This also allowed Ji Tianxing to deeply understand a principle. Divine weapons were only external objects in the end, and they couldn't be relied on. If one wanted to have a powerful battle strength, the most important thing was to be strong enough. With his blood dragon sword cut in half, his hands were empty and he no longer had the strength to resist. Moreover, he was forced into a corner of the courtyard with a thick wall behind him. There was no way out. The Tongxian realm expert's expression became even more ferocious. He held his sword and walked towards Ji Tianxing with a smug smile. Little bastard, let's see where you can run to now. Obediently accept your death. Ji Tianxing, who had no weapon and was only a true Yuan realm expert, was a lamb waiting to be slaughtered in his eyes. Die! With a murderous roar, he swung his sword with bloodshot eyes, fiercely slashing toward Ji Tianxing. The sword aura that was wreathed in scarlet flames erupted with an incomparably violent strength qi that enveloped Ji Tianxing's entire body. At the moment of life and death, Ji Tianxing did not despair. His face was still as calm as water. His eyes were fixed on the red sword light that was slashing towards him, and his heart was filled with an incomparable desire to survive. He couldn't die. Even if he had to die, he couldn't die here. No matter what, he had to survive. The blood in his entire body was boiling, and his chest was burning with a monstrous fighting spirit and fury. He did not hesitate to use his trump card. Although he no longer had his treasured sword, he still had his sword qi. Swish swish. Ji Tianxing immediately waved his palms and sent out two golden sword qi towards the common mysterious expert. Although the golden sword qi was only as long as a finger, it was as fast as lightning and extremely sharp. The two sword qi were aimed at the common mysterious expert's forehead and throat, and were about to pierce through his vital parts in an instant. The common mysterious expert's expression immediately changed, and his heart was filled with intense shock and fear. He quickly withdrew his scarlet sword aura to block the attack of the two sword qi. The scarlet sword aura was very fast, but the two golden sword qi were even faster. They dodged the sword aura's block in an instant. An even more shocking scene appeared. Swish 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 swish. Under the control of Ji Tianxing's mind, the two golden sword qi actually split into two and became four sword qi. Swish swish swish. The four sword qi shot out extremely fast and ruthlessly pierced the common mysterious expert's vital parts. The sword qi was so fast that it actually made a sharp sound of breaking through the air, which made people tremble with fear. The common mysterious expert's expression changed drastically. His eyes were filled with horror, and he hurriedly waved his sword to block. However, he only had one arm, and the way he frantically waved his sword to counterattack looked very comical. The scarlet sword aura and the golden sword qi kept colliding, making crisp ding-ding-ding sounds. However, the four sword qi were like living creatures with intelligence. After being shaken off, they flew back to the common mysterious expert's side and rapidly pierced his vital parts. Moreover, the four sword qi split again and actually became 8 sword qi. Each sword qi was sharp and fierce. When they flew around the common mysterious expert to attack, they even left a long trail of golden light, which looked like golden lines. After the 8 sword qi flew around and attacked a few times, hundreds of golden lines were drawn around the common mysterious expert, as if they were forming a fishing net. The common mysterious expert was completely wrapped by the golden fishing net. He stood still and did not dare to move at all. When his robe came into contact with the golden lines, it was instantly cut into pieces. When he waved his sword to counterattack, his arms and ankles came into contact with the golden lines, and immediately, there were deep bloody wounds that exposed his bones. In just a few breaths, the common mysterious expert's long robe was cut into rags and became a pile of rags. His body was also covered with crisscrossing wounds. Blood continuously flowed out and dripped onto the ground. When the 8 sword qi split again and became 16 sword qi, his expression became more and more frightened. His eyes revealed a deep sense of despair. Xiao xiao xiao. The 16 sword qi flew around and formed a huge golden sword net, covering a radius of 10 feet. The common mysterious expert was continuously hit by the sword qi. He was already covered in blood,
and there was not a single piece of intact flesh on his body. This kind of pain was like torture. It made him welcome the arrival of death in despair and pain. Finally, the common mysterious expert could not hold on any longer. The scarlet sword aura with his one arm gradually stopped. 16 golden sword cheese pierced into his vital parts one after another, piercing into his forehead, eyes, glabella, and chest. Ugh! A painful groan came from the throat of the mystic comprehending expert. His body trembled and swayed a few times before he finally fell to the ground with a thump, dead. The Ji family members in the yard witnessed the common mysterious expert being killed by Ji Tianqing's sword net with their own eyes. They were all stunned on the spot. Everyone's faces were full of shock. They looked at Ji Tianqing in disbelief and could not help but exclaim. Heavens! What the hell is that? The sword chi can actually fly and condense into a sword net. What the hell? This old man has lived for more than 50 years and I have never seen such a strange thing. Not to mention a common mysterious expert, even a Yuan Dan expert might not be able to control the sword chi to attack like this. What the hell? What the hell? How did Ji Tianqing, that fellow, master such a strange secret technique? The younger generation of the Ji family members were all in awe of Ji Tianqing's sword chi technique. Although Ji Ruffing and the other leaders were experienced and knowledgeable, they had never seen such a strange method of attack. They were inexplicably shocked and their horizons were broadened. If they had not seen it with their own eyes, no one would dare to believe that Ji Tianqing, who was only at the true energy realm, could use such a strange method to kill a common mysterious expert. Brothers, the 5th update has arrived. Please add it to your collection, recommendation tickets, and rewards. My new book needs your support. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.